One simple question about money changed everything we thought we knew about the greatest basketball player of all time. When sports reporter Maya Chen asked Michael Jordan about his expensive lifestyle at a charity golf tournament in July 2023, she expected a typical answer about success and hard work. Instead, Jordan stunned everyone within earshot by revealing that his legendary 1995 comeback had a secret that he'd kept hidden for almost 30 years. "There was a reason I really came back to basketball," Jordan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "And it wasn't what people think. It had everything to do with money, but not the way you'd expect." Within hours of Maya's article hitting the internet, the story exploded across social media. Jordan's secret trended worldwide. ESPN interrupted regular programming. Sports Illustrated called it the missing piece of the Jordan puzzle. The revelation was so shocking that it made people see Jordan's greatest achievements in a completely different light. But this isn't a story about scandal or shame. This is a story about the most inspiring comeback in sports history. One that had nothing to do with basketball and everything to do with love, family, and the unbreakable human spirit. What Maya discovered would prove that Michael Jordan's greatest victory wasn't any championship ring. It was something much more powerful, much more personal, and much more inspiring than anyone could have imagined. This is the story of how failure became fuel, how fear became strength, and how one man's worst crisis became the motivation for his most legendary achievements. The hot July sun beat down on the Quail Hollow Club golf course in Charlotte, North Carolina. It was the kind of perfect summer day that made people want to be outside. The 2023 Jordan Celebrity Golf Classic was in full swing, with famous faces scattered across the green fairways. Michael Jordan stood on the 7th tee, his tall frame casting a long shadow on the perfectly cut grass. At 60 years old, he still moved like an athlete. His Nike golf shirt was crisp and white. His shoes were spotless. Everything about him looked expensive and perfect. "Nice shot, MJ," called out Charles Barkley from the next tee over. The former NBA star was struggling with his own golf swing. As usual, Jordan smiled, but didn't answer. He was focused on his next shot. Even in a charity golf game, he wanted to win. That drive to be the best had never left him. Maya Chen watched from the sideline, her press badge hanging around her neck. She had been covering sports for 10 years, but she still felt nervous around big stars like Jordan. Her camera hung heavy on her shoulder. Her notebook was already half full of quotes from other players. Maya was 28 years old and worked for the Charlotte Observer. She had grown up in the city, watching Jordan play for the Charlotte Hornets team he now owned. But she had never gotten a real interview with him. Today might be her chance. The charity event was raising money for children's hospitals. Jordan did this tournament every year. He always showed up, played well, and gave short answers to reporters. Then he would leave in his expensive car. But Maya had heard something interesting. Her uncle David worked as one of Jordan's managers. At a family dinner last week, Uncle David had mentioned that Jordan seemed different lately. More thoughtful. More willing to talk about the past. "He's been thinking about his legacy," Uncle David had said. "Not just the basketball stuff. The whole story." Maya hoped that was true. She needed a big story to help her career. Working in Charlotte was good, but she dreamed of writing for a national magazine or newspaper. The golf game moved slowly in the summer heat. Jordan played with 3 other celebrities, a country music singer, a NASCAR driver, and a former NFL quarterback. They joked and laughed between shots. Jordan seemed relaxed and happy. After the 9th hole, the players took a break. They sat in the shade under a white tent. Cold drinks and sandwiches waited for them. This was Maya's chance. She walked over to the tent, trying to look confident. Her heart was beating fast. Jordan was sitting lone, drinking a bottle of water. He looked up as she approached. "Mr. Jordan," Maya said, her voice steady. "I'm Maya Chen, from the Charlotte Observer. Could I ask you a few questions?" Jordan looked at her for a moment. His dark eyes were sharp and intelligent. "Sure," he said. "But make it quick. We're starting again in 10 minutes. Maya sat down across from him. She pulled out her small recording device. "Do you mind if I record this?" Jordan shrugged. "Go ahead." Maya had planned her questions carefully. She started with safe topics: the charity event, his golf game, how he was enjoying retirement. Jordan gave the usual short answers. He was polite but not very interesting. Then Maya decided to take a risk. She remembered something her journalism teacher had taught her. The best stories come from the questions people don't expect. "Mr. Jordan," she said, leaning forward slightly, "people always ask about your basketball career, but they're curious about something else. Your spending habits. You've been known for some pretty big purchases. What drives that?" Jordan had been about to take another drink of water. He stopped. The bottle stayed halfway to his lips. Something changed in his expression. Maya held her breath. She had heard stories about Jordan's expensive lifestyle. The huge houses, the private jets, the million-dollar car collection. Most reporters asked about his championships or his competitiveness. Nobody ever asked about money. Jordan set down his water bottle slowly. He looked at Maya with new interest. The other celebrities were still talking and laughing nearby, but they seemed far away now. "You know what?" Jordan said, his voice different now. Softer. More serious. "That's actually connected to something I've never told anyone. Something that happened right before I came back in." Maya's eyes widened. Jordan's comeback to basketball in 1995 was one of the most famous stories in sports history. Everyone knew about his "I'm back" announcement. Everyone knew how he had led the Chicago Bulls to 3 more championships. But there were always rumors that there was more to the story. The other golfers nearby stopped talking. They had heard Jordan's tone change. Even Charles Barkley looked over from his conversation with the NASCAR driver. Jordan seemed to realize that people were listening. He glanced around the tent. His security guard, a large man in a dark suit, had moved closer. Maya's uncle David, who had been talking to tournament officials, was now walking toward them with a worried look on his face. "There was a reason I really came back to basketball," Jordan continued, his voice getting quieter. "And it wasn't what people think. It had everything to do with money. But not the way you'd expect." Maya's heart was racing now. This was it. This was the big story she had been hoping for. She made sure her recorder was still running. Her hands were shaking slightly, but she tried to stay calm. "What do you mean?" she asked. Jordan looked directly at her. His famous competitive fire was flickering in his eyes. But there was something else there too, something that looked almost like pain. "The truth is," Jordan started to say, "Michael." Uncle David had reached the table. His voice was sharp with warning. "We need to get back to the game." Jordan looked up at David. The two men stared at each other for a moment. Maya could feel the tension between them. Something important was being decided without words. Jordan turned back to Maya. For a second, she thought he was going to keep talking. She could see him wrestling with the decision. Then he shook his head as if waking up from a dream. "Actually," Jordan said, standing up from his chair, "forget I said anything. That's all ancient history now." He picked up his golf glove and started walking toward the next tee. But he moved slowly, like he didn't really want to go. Maya jumped up from her chair. "Mr. Jordan, wait, please." Jordan stopped and turned around. The other celebrities were watching now. Even some of the other reporters had noticed something was happening. "I know this is important," Maya said, trying to keep her voice calm. "Whatever happened in 1995, people deserve to know the real story." Jordan stared at her for what felt like a long time. Maya could see him thinking. She could almost see the battle going on in his mind. "Some stories," Jordan said finally, "aren't meant to be told." But even as he said it, Maya could tell he didn't really believe it. There was something in his voice that said he wanted to talk. Something that said he was tired of keeping secrets. "Everyone thinks they know why I came back to basketball," Jordan added almost to himself. "They think it was about missing the game, about proving I was still the best. But they're wrong." He looked directly at Maya again. "They're completely wrong." Then he walked away, leaving Maya standing under the tent with her recorder still running and her mind racing with possibilities. Uncle David lingered for a moment. "Maya," he said quietly, "be careful. Some doors are better left closed." But Maya was already thinking about how to find the key to open this particular door. She had just stumbled onto the biggest story of her career, and she wasn't going to let it go. As Jordan walked back to the golf course, she noticed something she hadn't seen before. His shoulders looked heavy, like he was carrying a weight that nobody else could see. For the first time, the great Michael Jordan looked almost vulnerable. Maya watched him line up his next shot. Even from a distance, she could see that his hands were shaking slightly. Not from nervousness about the golf shot, but from something much bigger. She looked down at her recorder. The red light was still blinking. She had it all on tape. Jordan's admission that his comeback story wasn't what people thought. His hint that money was involved in a way nobody expected. As she walked back to the press area, Maya's mind was already working. She would need to be careful. She would need to be smart. But she was going to find out what really happened, and she had no idea that the truth would be bigger and more shocking than anything she could imagine. Maya Chen sat in her small apartment that night, staring at her laptop screen. The cursor blinked at the top of a blank document. She had tried to start writing her story 3 times, but the words wouldn't come. The problem was simple. She didn't have enough information. All she had was Jordan's mysterious comment about money and his comeback. That wasn't enough for a real story. Her apartment was tiny but cozy. She lived on the 3rd floor of an old building in downtown Charlotte. Through her window, she could see the lights of the city. Somewhere out there, Michael Jordan was probably in his huge mansion, keeping his secrets. Maya picked up her phone and scrolled through her contacts. She found her uncle's name and hesitated. Uncle David had worked with Jordan for almost 30 years. He was one of the few people Jordan really trusted, but he had also warned her to be careful. She pressed the call button anyway. "Maya?" Uncle David's voice sounded tired. "It's pretty late." "I know, Uncle David. I'm sorry, but I need to ask you about today." There was a long pause. Maya could hear the TV playing in the background at her uncle's house. "Maya, we shouldn't talk about this over the phone." "Then let's meet tomorrow." "Please. You heard what he said. There's a real story here." Another pause. "Some stories aren't meant to be told. Maya, I said that today, and I meant it." "But why?" Maya stood up and started pacing around her small living room. If something happened in 1995 and it's been bothering him all these years, maybe it's time people knew the truth. "You don't understand," Uncle David said. His voice was getting firmer. "Michael trusts me because I keep his secrets. All of them. I can't help you with this." Maya felt frustrated. "Uncle David, this could be the biggest story of my career, and it could be the end of mine," he replied. "I'm sorry, Maya. I can't talk about Jordan's business. Not even with family." The phone went dead. Maya stared at it for a moment, then threw it onto her couch. She sat back down at her laptop. Maybe she could research Jordan's comeback on her own. She opened her browser and started searching. There were hundreds of articles about Jordan's return to basketball in March 1995. Maya read through them, looking for clues. Most of the stories were about how excited fans were. Some talked about Jordan's struggles in his first games back. A few mentioned his baseball career and why he decided to quit. But none of them mentioned money problems. None of them suggested his comeback was about anything other than missing basketball. Maya kept searching. She found old newspaper archives from Chicago. She read sports magazines from 1995. She even found some old TV interviews with Jordan from that time. In one interview, Jordan looked tired. The reporter asked him why he really decided to come back. Jordan dawdled for a long time before answering. "Sometimes a man has to do what he has to do," Jordan had said. At the time, everyone thought he was talking about his love for the game, but Maya wondered if there was more to it. She made notes in a small notebook. Jordan had met with several Chicago businessmen in February 1995. The meetings were mentioned in a few business newspapers, but there were no details about what they discussed. Maya looked at her clock. It was almost midnight. She had been researching for 4 hours and hadn't found anything useful. She closed her laptop and got ready for bed. But she couldn't sleep. Jordan's words kept running through her mind. It had everything to do with money, but not the way you'd expect. The next morning, Maya woke up with new energy. She made coffee and sat down with her laptop again. This time, she had a different idea. If Uncle David wouldn't help her, maybe she could find other people who worked with Jordan in the 1990s. She started making a list of names. She found phone numbers for former Bulls players, coaches, and team employees. Most of them probably wouldn't talk to her, but maybe one of them would. Her first call was to Dr. Patricia Williams. Maya had found her name in an old article about sports psychology. Dr. Williams had worked with several Bulls players in the 1990s. She was retired now and lived in Florida. Dr. Williams? This is Maya Chen from the Charlotte Observer. I'm working on a story about Michael Jordan, and I was hoping you might have a few minutes to talk. I don't usually talk to reporters about my former clients, Dr. Williams said. Her voice was kind but careful. I understand, Maya said, but this isn't about basketball. It's about something that might help people understand Jordan better. Something about his comeback and There was a pause. What exactly are you looking for? Maya took a deep breath. Yesterday, Jordan told me that his comeback wasn't really about missing basketball. He said it had to do with money, but not in the way people think. I'm trying to understand what he meant. Another pause. Dr. Williams seemed to be thinking. I can't talk about specific players, she said finally. But I will say this. Sometimes the biggest champions are driven by their biggest fears. What do you mean? Fear of losing. Fear of failure. And sometimes, fear of losing things that are more important than games. Family. Security. The ability to take care of the people you love. Maya wrote down every word. Are you saying that financial problems can affect an athlete's performance? I'm saying that when someone's whole world is threatened, it can either destroy them or make them stronger than ever before. The great ones find a way to turn that fear into fuel. Dr. Williams wouldn't say anything more specific, but Maya felt like she was on the right track. She thanked the doctor and hung up. Her next call was to a former Chicago Tribune reporter named Jake Sullivan. Maya had found his name in several old articles about Jordan's business deals. Jake was retired now and taught journalism at Northwestern University. Jordan's business deals? Jake laughed when Maya explained what she was looking for. Oh, there were definitely some interesting stories back then. Maya's heart started beating faster. What kind of stories? Well, I can't prove anything, but there were rumors, whispers around Chicago that Jordan's gambling and spending had gotten out of control. Not just the Atlantic City stories that everyone knows about. Bigger things. Like what? Real estate deals that went bad. Restaurant investments that failed. Some people said he was in serious financial trouble by 1994. But Jordan's people were very good at keeping those stories quiet. Maya was writing as fast as she could. Do you think that's why he came back to basketball? Jake was quiet for a moment. You know, I always wondered about that. The timing was interesting. Jordan announced his comeback right around the time when some of his business problems were getting worse. What kind of business problems? I heard about a sports drink company that went broke. Cost him millions. There was also talk about a minor league baseball team investment that didn't work out. And the restaurant chain, that was a disaster. Maya felt excited. This was real information. Do you have any proof of this? I kept some notes from back then, Jake said. I never wrote the stories because I couldn't confirm everything. But if you're really investigating this, I might be able to help. They agreed to meet the next week. Maya would fly to Chicago to look at Jake's old files. After she hung up, Maya sat back in her chair. She was starting to see a pattern. Jordan had been making big business deals in the early 1990s. Some of those deals had gone bad. Maybe he had lost more money than people knew. But how much money? And why would that force him to come back to basketball? Maya spent the rest of the day making more calls. Most people wouldn't talk to her. But she found a few more sources who confirmed that Jordan had been involved in several failed business deals. By evening, Maya had filled 10 pages in her notebook. She didn't have the whole story yet, but she had enough to know that Uncle David was wrong. This story needed to be told. She looked at her phone, thinking about calling Uncle David again. But she decided not to. He had made his position clear. If she was going to find the truth about Jordan's comeback, she would have to do it without his help. Maya opened her laptop and started writing. She didn't have enough for a complete story yet, but she could start organizing what she knew. She created a timeline of events from 1994 and 1995. She made lists of people to contact and questions to ask. As she worked, she kept thinking about something Dr. Williams had said. The great ones find a way to turn that fear into fuel. What if Jordan's greatest achievements weren't just about talent and hard work? What if they were about survival? Maya looked out her window at the Charlotte skyline. Somewhere in this city, Michael Jordan was probably asleep in his mansion. Tomorrow, she would continue her search for the truth about what really happened in. She had no idea how dangerous that truth might be, or how many people had worked very hard to keep it secret. But Maya Chen was determined to find out. 3 days later, Maya was on a plane to Chicago. She had used her vacation days and spent her own money for the trip. The Charlotte Observer wouldn't pay for the investigation until she had more proof that a real story existed. As the plane descended toward O'Hare Airport, Maya looked out the window at the city below. Chicago was where Jordan had become a legend. It was also where his secrets were buried. Maya rented a small car and drove toward the south side. Her first stop was Tommy's Diner, a small restaurant near where the Bulls used to practice. She had found Tommy Rodriguez through old newspaper articles. He had worked as a security guard at the Bulls practice facility in the 90s. The diner was small and busy. The smell of bacon and coffee filled the air. Maya found Tommy behind the counter, flipping pancakes on a hot grill. He was 65 years old now, with gray hair and gentle eyes. "Tommy Rodriguez?" Maya approached the counter carefully. "I'm Maya Chen from the Charlotte Observer. I called yesterday about Michael Jordan." Tommy looked up from his cooking. His expression became cautious. "You're the reporter who wants to ask about the old days." "That's right, I know this might seem strange, but I'm investigating something that happened in 1995. Right before Jordan came back to basketball." Tommy wiped his hands on his apron. "Let me finish this order, then we can talk." Maya sat at a small table and waited. The diner was full of working people eating breakfast before their jobs. Nobody paid attention to her, which was good. She wanted this conversation to stay private. Tommy brought her a cup of coffee and sat down across from her. "What exactly do you want now?" Maya pulled out her notebook. "I heard that Jordan had some meetings at the practice facility in February 1995. Meetings with businessmen. Do you remember anything like that?" Tommy was quiet for a moment. He looked around the diner, making sure nobody was listening. "I saw things," Tommy said finally. His voice was low. "Things I wasn't supposed to see." Maya's heart started beating faster. "What kind of things?" February 1995. Late one night, Mr. Jordan came to the facility around 10 o'clock. He wasn't there to practice. He met with some men in expensive suits. They had briefcases. Maya wrote down every word. "How many men?" "3 or 4. I remember because it was unusual. Mr. Jordan always came to practice during normal hours, and he never brought business people to the gym." "What did they look like?" Tommy thought for a moment. "Older men, white guys in their 50s or 60s. They looked like bankers or lawyers, the kind of people who had a lot of money." "How long did the meeting last?" "About 3 hours. I had to stay late because of security rules. Nobody could be in the building alone." Maya looked up from her notebook. "Did you hear anything they talked about?" Tommy shook his head. "They met in the conference room, but I could see them through the glass windows." Mr. Jordan looked worried. Not his normal confident self. "Worried how?" He kept running his hands through his hair. He was pacing around the room, and when the meeting ended, he didn't look happy. Maya felt like she was getting somewhere. "What happened after the men left?" "That was the strangest part," Tommy said. "Mr. Jordan stayed. He went out to the gym and started shooting free throws. Just standing there by himself, shooting the same shot over and over again. For how long? Maybe an hour. No music, no lights except the ones over the court. Just him and the ball. I'd never seen him do anything like that before." Maya could picture it in her mind. Jordan alone in the dark gym, shooting free throws after a stressful business meeting. It seemed sad and lonely. "Did his attitude change after that night?" Maya asked. Tommy nodded. "The next day he came to practice early. But he was different. More intense. Like someone had lit a fire under him." "Different how?" "Usually Mr. Jordan was confident but relaxed during practice. After that meeting, he was angry. Not at his teammates, but at something. He played harder than I'd ever seen him play." Maya finished writing and looked up at Tommy. "Do you think those men were threatening him?" Tommy considered the question. "I don't know about threatening, but they weren't friends. You could tell by the body language. This was serious business." Maya thanked Tommy and left the diner. Her next stop was across town to find Carmen Martinez. Carmen had worked as a cleaning lady in the office building where Jordan had his business headquarters. Maya found Carmen at her small house in a quiet neighborhood. Carmen was 58 years old and had retired from cleaning offices. She invited Maya inside for tea. "I remember Mr. Jordan," Carmen said as they sat in her living room. "He was always polite to me. Most important people don't notice cleaning ladies. But he always said hello. Carmen, I'm trying to find out about some business problems Jordan might have had in 1995. Did you ever see anything unusual in his office?" Carmen's expression became serious. There was something late February, early March 1995. I was cleaning Mr. Jordan's office late at night. What did you see? Papers everywhere. Usually his office was very neat and organized. But that night there were financial papers all over his desk. Spreadsheets and contracts and legal documents. Maya leaned forward. "Do you remember what any of the papers said?" Carmen nodded slowly. "I wasn't trying to read them, but I saw something that scared me. Big numbers with lots of zeros. And I saw the word debt written in red letters." Maya's pulse quickened. "How big were the numbers?" "Millions of dollars. I remember thinking it was more money than I would see in 10 lifetimes. Did the papers say whose debt it was?" "I think so. But I can't remember exactly. I was just trying to clean the office and get home to my family." Carmen was quiet for a moment, remembering. There was something else. Mr. Jordan's secretary had left a note on his desk. It said something about urgent payment required and final notice. Maya wrote everything down carefully. "Carmen, did you ever see Jordan in the office during this time?" "A few times. He looked tired and stressed. Once I saw him on the phone, and he sounded upset. He was saying things like, 'I need more time, and there has to be another way.'" "Do you know who he was talking to?" "No, but he sounded desperate. Like he was asking someone for help." Maya left Carmen's house with more pieces of the puzzle. Tommy and Carmen had both seen signs that Jordan was under serious financial pressure in early 1995. The timeline matched perfectly with his decision to return to basketball. But Maya still needed more proof. She drove to Northwestern University to meet with Jake Sullivan, the former newspaper reporter. Jake's office was small and cluttered with old newspapers and journalism textbooks. He was 67 years old, with white hair and sharp blue eyes. He had been covering Chicago sports and business for 30 years before retiring. "So you're investigating Jordan's finances," Jake said, sitting behind his desk. "I wondered when someone would finally look into that story." Maya pulled out her notebook. "You mentioned that you had some information about his business problems." Jake opened the file cabinet and pulled out a thick folder. "I kept notes on Jordan's business deals through the 1990s. Some of these stories never got published." He opened the folder and spread out several pages of handwritten notes. "Here's what I knew," Jake said. In 1993, Jordan invested $5 million in a company called Champion Sports Drinks. The company was supposed to compete with Gatorade. What happened to it? Went bankrupt in 6 months. Jordan lost everything he put in. Jake flipped to another page. Then there was the restaurant chain, Jordan's Grill. 8 locations in Chicago and Milwaukee. Jordan invested $12 million. Let me guess. They failed too. All 8 restaurants closed within a year. The food was bad, the management was worse, and Jordan lost almost all of his investment. Maya was adding up the numbers in her head. $17 million lost on just 2 deals. "There's more," Jake continued. "Jordan bought a minor league baseball team in 1994. Cost him $8 million. The team never made money, and he had to sell it for $3 million. Another $5 million loss. So he lost at least $22 million on bad investments?" Jake nodded. "And those are just the deals I knew about. There were probably others." Maya looked at her notes. $22 million was an enormous amount of money, even for someone as rich as Jordan. "Jake, do you think Jordan borrowed money to make these investments?" "That's the interesting question," Jake said. "I heard rumors that he had borrowed against his future earnings. Jordan was confident that his business deals would be successful, so he borrowed money expecting to pay it back quickly. But when the deals failed, he still owed the money. Plus interest, plus penalties for late payments." Maya felt like the pieces were starting to fit together. "Do you think that's why he came back to basketball?" Jake leaned back in his chair. "It would make sense. Basketball was the only way Jordan could make enough money quickly to pay off his debts." Maya spent another hour with Jake, going through his old notes. By the time she left Northwestern, she had a clear picture of Jordan's financial problems. But she still needed more proof. and she needed to find out exactly how much money Jordan owed and to whom. As Maya drove back to her hotel, she thought about everything she had learned. Jordan wasn't just a basketball player who missed the game. He was a man who had made terrible business decisions and needed to find a way out of serious financial trouble. The greatest comeback in sports history might have been about survival, not glory. Maya knew she was getting close to the truth, but she also knew that the most important questions were still unanswered. Who were the men in suits that Tommy had seen? How much money did Jordan really owe? And why had this story stayed secret for almost 30 years? Tomorrow, she would start looking for those answers. Maya woke up early in her Chicago hotel room. She had spent the night reading through all her notes from the previous day. The evidence was building, but she still felt like she was missing something important. She ordered room service coffee and spread her papers across the small hotel desk. Tommy had seen businessmen with briefcase. Carmen had seen debt papers with millions of dollars. Jake had documented over 20 million in failed investments. But none of that explained who Jordan owed money to, or exactly how much. Maya picked up her phone and called Jake Sullivan again. Maybe he could point her toward more sources. Jake, it's Maya Chen. Thank you again for yesterday. I was wondering if you knew anyone else who might have information about Jordan's financial situation and Actually, yes, Jake said. There's a guy named Robert Kim. He was a financial advisor in Chicago back then. He worked with a lot of athletes and celebrities. I heard he knew about Jordan's problems. Is he still in Chicago? I think so. Let me see if I can find his contact information. While she waited for Jake to call back, Maya decided to visit the old Bulls practice facility. Maybe she could find other people who had worked there in the night. The building looked different now. It had been renovated and turned into a community center, but Maya could imagine Jordan shooting free throws alone in the dark, worrying about his financial problems. She found the building manager, an older woman named Mrs. Johnson. Mrs. Johnson had worked there since the 1980s and remembered the Bulls championship years well. Oh yes, I remember the winter of 1995, Mrs. Johnson said. That was when Mr. Jordan started coming in at strange hours. Very late at night or very early in the morning. Did you ever see him with businessmen? Mrs. Johnson nodded. A few times. They always looked serious. Not like the fun meetings he had with his teammates or coaches. Do you remember anything specific about those meetings? Well, there was one night in particular. I was working late, finishing some paperwork. I saw Mr. Jordan's car in the parking lot around midnight. That was very unusual. Maya pulled out her notebook. What happened? I looked out the window and saw him talking to 3 men next to a black sedan. They were arguing about something. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but you could tell it was tense. How long did they talk? Maybe 20 minutes. Then the men got in their car and drove away. Mr. Jordan stood in the parking lot for a long time after that, just staring at the building. Maya felt like she was getting closer to understanding what had happened, but she still needed to find someone who knew the financial details. Her phone rang. It was Jake calling back. Maya, I found Robert Kim's number, but I should warn you, he's very careful about client confidentiality. He might not want to talk. Maya wrote down the phone number. Thanks, Jake. I'll try to convince him. She called Robert Kim immediately. The phone rang several times before a cautious voice answered. This is Robert. Mr. Kim, my name is Maya Chen. I'm a reporter investigating Michael Jordan's financial situation in 1995. Jake Sullivan gave me your number. There was a long pause. I don't talk to reporters about my clients. I understand, Maya said quickly. But this isn't about damaging anyone's reputation. I'm trying to understand what really motivated Jordan's comeback. If he was in financial trouble, that makes his achievements even more impressive. Another pause. What exactly do you want to know? Did you know about Jordan's business problems in the mid-1990s? Robert sighed. I wasn't his financial advisor, but I knew other people in the business. There were rumors. What kind of rumors? Look, I can't give you specific details, but I will say this. Some athletes in that era got in serious trouble with bad investments and overspending. The ones who survived were the ones who found ways to earn money quickly. Maya sensed that Robert knew more than he was saying. Mr. Kim, was basketball the only way Jordan could make enough money to solve his problems? For someone in his situation, with his earning potential, it would have been the fastest solution. A successful comeback could boost endorsement deals, renegotiate contracts, increase appearance fees. How much money are we talking about? Robert was quiet for a moment. If the rumors I heard were true, we're talking about enough money to buy several houses, enough to make even a very rich person worry about their future. After Maya hung up, she felt frustrated. Everyone seemed to know pieces of the story, but nobody would give her the complete picture. She decided to try a different approach. Instead of looking for financial advisors, she would look for the people who had lent Jordan money. The businessmen in the expensive suits that Tommy had seen. Maya spent the afternoon at the Chicago Public Library, searching through old business records. She looked for companies that had been involved in Jordan's failed investments. She searched for names of Chicago investors who worked with athletes. After 3 hours of research, she found something interesting. A business newspaper, from February 1995, mentioned a meeting between Jordan and a group of Chicago investors led by businessman Harold Chen. Harold Chen. Maya wrote down the name and started searching for more information about him. She found several articles about Harold Chen from the 1990s. He was a wealthy businessman who invested in restaurants, real estate, and sports-related companies. He was 68 years old in 1995, which matched Tommy's description of older men in expensive suits. Maya found an address for Harold Chen's company, but the building had been torn down years ago. She searched online and found that Harold Chen was now 86 years old and living in a retirement community in Arizona. Maya called the retirement community and asked to speak with Harold Chen. The receptionist said she would take a message. An hour later, Maya's phone rang. "This is Harold Chen. I understand you're asking questions about Michael Jordan." Maya's heart started racing. "Mr. Chen, thank you for calling me back. I'm investigating Jordan's financial situation in 1995, and your name came up in connection with some business meetings. What exactly do you want to know? Were you involved in lending money to Jordan, or helping him with financial problems?" There was a long pause. Maya held her breath. "Young lady, that was a very long time ago. Why are you interested in this now?" "Because I think the real story of Jordan's comeback has never been told. If he was facing financial difficulties, that makes his achievements even more remarkable." Harold Chen was quiet for several minutes. Maya could hear him breathing, but he didn't speak. "Mr. Chen, are you still there?" "I'm here. I'm just thinking. You know, Michael asked us never to talk about what happened. We've kept that promise for almost 30 years. Maya felt like she was on the edge of a major breakthrough. "Mr. Chen, if you could help me understand what happened, I promise to tell the story in a way that respects Jordan's privacy and shows his strength." Another long pause. "I'm an old man now," Harold finally said, "and I've been carrying this secret for a long time. Maybe it's time someone knew the truth." Maya grabbed her pen and notebook. "What can you tell me?" "Not over the phone. If you really want to know what happened, you'll have to come to Arizona. And you'll have to promise me that you'll tell the story the right way. I can be there tomorrow," Maya said without hesitation. "Good. Come to Sunshine Retirement Community in Phoenix. Ask for me at the front desk. And Miss Chen? Yes? Bring your recorder. This is a story that needs to be told exactly right." Maya hung up the phone and immediately called the airline to book a flight to Phoenix. Her credit card was almost maxed out, but she didn't care. She was about to learn the truth about Michael Jordan's biggest secret. As she packed her bags, Maya thought about everything she had discovered so far. Jordan had lost over $20 million on bad investments. He had been meeting with worried businessmen in the middle of the night. He had been under enormous financial pressure right before his comeback. But Maya sensed that Harold Chen was going to tell her something even bigger, something that would change the way people thought about Jordan's legacy forever. She looked at her plane ticket. Phoenix, Arizona. Tomorrow, she would finally learn what really happened and why Michael Jordan's greatest victory wasn't on a basketball court. Maya's flight to Phoenix was delayed by 2 hours. She sat in the airport, checking her notes and trying to stay calm. Harold Chen had agreed to tell her the truth about Jordan's financial problems, but Maya was nervous about what she might learn. When she finally arrived in Phoenix, the desert heat hit her like a wall. Maya had never been to Arizona before. Everything looked different from Chicago or Charlotte. Flat land, mountains in the distance, and bright sunshine everywhere. Sunshine Retirement Community was a collection of low buildings surrounded by palm trees and small gardens. Maya parked her rental car and walked to the front desk. "I'm here to see Harold Chen," she told the receptionist. "He's expecting me." The receptionist, a friendly woman in her 50s, smiled. "Oh yes, Mr. Chen mentioned you were coming. He's waiting in the garden area. Just follow the signs." Maya found Harold Chen sitting on a bench under a large tree. He was a small man with white hair and intelligent eyes. Even at 86, he looked alert and sharp. "Miss Chen?" Harold stood up as she approached. "Thank you for coming all this way." Maya shook his hand. "Thank you for agreeing to talk with me, Mr. Chen." They sat down on the bench. Maya pulled out her recorder and notebook. "Before we start, I want you to know that I'm committed to telling this story fairly. I'm not trying to hurt Jordan's reputation." Harold nodded. "I believe you. That's why I agreed to talk. Michael Jordan is a good man who got into a bad situation. People should know the truth about how hard he fought to fix it." Maya turned on her recorder. "Can you tell me about your relationship with Jordan?" "I was part of a group of Chicago investors," Harold began. "We had money to lend to athletes and celebrities for business deals. Jordan came to us in 1993 when he wanted to start investing in companies." "What kind of companies?" "Sports drinks, restaurants, entertainment, businesses." Michael was confident he could be as successful in business as he was in basketball. "We believed him." Harold paused and looked at the mountains in the distance. "Michael borrowed a lot of money from us. More than most people realize." Maya leaned forward. "How much money?" "By the end of 1994, Michael owed our group $43 million. Maya's pen stopped moving. $43 million was much more than she had expected. All from failed business deals? That's right. The sports drink company, the restaurants, the baseball team investment, plus several other deals that never worked out. Every time a business failed, Michael would ask to borrow more money to try a different idea. "Why did you keep lending to him?" Harold smiled sadly. "Because he was Michael Jordan. We thought he couldn't fail at anything. And he promised he would pay us back with profits from his business deals." Maya tried to imagine owing $43 million. It was more money than most people would see in 10 lifetimes. "Mr. Chen, what happened when the businesses kept failing?" "By January 1995, we were getting worried. Our other investors were asking questions. We had to do something." Harold stood up and started walking slowly along a garden path. Maya walked beside him, still recording their conversation. "We called a meeting for February 1995. Harold continued. "We told Michael he had 6 months to pay back the money, or we would have to take legal action." Maya remembered Tommy's story about the late-night meeting at the Bulls facility. "Was that the meeting at the basketball practice facility?" Harold nodded. "Michael didn't want to meet at his office or our office. Too many people might see us. So we met at the gym late at night." "What did you tell him?" "We gave him 2 choices. He could declare bankruptcy and destroy his reputation forever, or he could find a way to make the money back quickly." Maya's heart was beating fast. This was the moment she had been searching for. "What did Jordan say?" "He asked how much time he had. We told him 6 months. If he couldn't pay by August 1995, the debt would go up to $50 million because of interest and penalties." They sat down on another bench near a small fountain. Harold looked tired, as if remembering that night was difficult. "Miss Chen, you have to understand something. We weren't trying to hurt Michael. We actually liked and respected him. But business is business. We had our own investors to worry about." Maya nodded. "What happened next?" "Michael asked us what we thought he should do. We told him the truth. The only way he could make that much money quickly was to go back to basketball." Everything was starting to make sense to Maya. Jordan's comeback wasn't about missing the game. It was about financial survival. Did he agree to come back right away? No. He said he needed time to think. That's when we left him alone in the gym. We could see through the windows that he stayed there for a long time, just shooting baskets by himself. Harold paused. I felt sorry for him that night. Here was the greatest basketball player in the world, and he looked scared and alone. Maya was writing as fast as she could. When did he decide to make the comeback? He called me 2 weeks later. He said he would return to basketball, but only if we agreed to restructure the debt, instead of paying everything back immediately. He wanted to pay us a percentage of his future earnings. Did you agree to that? We had to. If Michael declared bankruptcy, we wouldn't get any of our money back. This way, we had a chance to recover our investment. Harold explained that Jordan's return to basketball in March 1995 was part of a carefully planned financial strategy. If the Bulls won the championship, Jordan's endorsement deals would increase dramatically. If they didn't win, he would still make enough money to start paying back his debts. But there was pressure, Harold added. If Michael came back and played badly, his market value would drop. Then he might never be able to pay us back. Maya realized that Jordan's struggles in his first games back weren't just about being rusty. He was playing under enormous financial pressure that no one knew about. Mr. Chen, did Jordan ever pay back the money? Harold smiled for the first time during their conversation. Every penny. It took him 3 years, but he paid back everything he owed, plus interest. How did he do it? The championships helped a lot. Winning in 1996, 1997, and 1998 made his endorsement deals worth millions more. Plus, he was very careful with his money after 1995. He learned from his mistakes. Maya felt like she was finally understanding the complete story. Jordan's financial crisis had motivated his greatest achievements. The fear of losing everything had driven him to win 3 more championships. But Maya sensed there was still more to learn. Harold had been talking about business and money. But what about Jordan's family? How had this affected his wife and children? Mr. Chen, did Jordan's family know about the financial problems? Harold's expression became serious. That's the part of the story that still makes me sad. Michael tried to protect his family from knowing how bad things were, but his wife, Juanita, figured it out. How? Michael told me later that Juanita had found some of the debt papers in his home office. She was terrified that they might lose their house, their security, everything they had built together. Harold shook his head. Michael said that was the worst part of the whole situation. Not the embarrassment or the business failures. It was seeing his wife scared and worried about their children's future. Maya thought about Jordan's children, who would have been very young in 1995. They probably didn't understand what was happening, but they could sense their parents' stress. Did that pressure affect Jordan's performance when he came back? At first, yes. Michael was so worried about everything that he couldn't focus completely on basketball. But as time went on, the pressure actually made him better. He was playing for more than just winning games. He was playing for his family's survival. Harold stood up again. Miss Chen, there's one more thing you should know. Something I've never told anyone before. Maya looked up from her notebook. What is it? Right before Michael's comeback announcement, he came to see me privately. He thanked me for giving him a chance to fix his mistakes. But then he said something I'll never forget. What did he say? Harold's voice became quiet. He said, Harold, I'm going to pay you back every dollar I owe. But more than that, I'm going to prove that failure doesn't have to be permanent. Sometimes the biggest mistakes can lead to the greatest comebacks. Maya felt tears in her eyes. She could picture Jordan making that promise, determined to turn his biggest failure into his greatest success. And he kept that promise, Harold continued. Not just financially, but in every way. The Michael Jordan, who came back in 1995, was stronger than the one who retired in 1993. He had learned what really mattered. As Maya packed up her recorder and notebook, she realized she had found much more than a story about money and basketball. She had found a story about courage, family, and the power of turning fear into motivation. Harold walked her back to the parking lot. Miss Chen, when you write this story, please remember something. Michael Jordan isn't just a great athlete. He's a man who faced his biggest failure and found a way to overcome it. That's a lesson everyone can learn from. Maya drove back to the airport thinking about everything Harold had told her. The numbers were staggering, $43 million in debt. The pressure of paying it back, the fear of losing everything. But the most important part wasn't the money. It was understanding that Jordan's greatest victories came when he had the most to lose. As her plane took off from Phoenix, Maya looked down at the desert below. She was carrying one of the biggest sports stories ever told, but she still had more investigating to do. She needed to find people who could tell her about Jordan's family life during this crisis. She needed to understand how the pressure affected his children and his marriage. Most importantly, she needed to verify Harold's story with other sources. Maya had learned enough. As a reporter, know that one person's account, no matter how compelling, wasn't enough to publish a story this big. But she was confident that Harold Chen had told her the truth, and she was determined to find the evidence to prove it. Maya flew back to Chicago the next morning. Harold Chen's story was incredible, but she needed to find other people who could confirm what he had told her. $43 million in debt was a huge claim. She had to be completely sure before writing her story. Her first stop was the Chicago Public Library again. Maya spent hours looking through old business records and newspaper files. She was searching for any mention of Harold Chen's investment group and their connection to Jordan. After 3 hours of searching, she found something important. A small business newspaper from March 1995 had a brief article about Chicago investment partners restructuring a major loan. The article didn't mention Jordan's name, but it talked about a high-profile athlete and mentioned Harold Chen as the group's leader. Maya took pictures of the article with her phone. It wasn't complete proof, but it supported Harold's story. Next, she decided to look for people who had worked closely with Jordan's family during the crisis. She needed to verify what Harold had said about Juanita Jordan's reaction to the debt problems. Maya remembered that wealthy families often had housekeepers, nannies, and other staff members who might have seen what was happening behind closed doors. These people usually signed confidentiality agreements, but sometimes they were willing to talk years later. She started calling employment agencies that placed domestic workers with rich families in the Chicago area. Most wouldn't give her any information. But the fourth agency she called was different. "I remember the Jordans," said the woman who answered the phone. "We placed several workers with them over the years. Let me see if I can find someone who might be willing to talk to you." An hour later, Maya's phone rang. "Hello, this is Lisa Washington. I heard you're asking about the Jordan family. I worked for them as a housekeeper in the mid-90s. Maya's heart jumped. "Miss Washington, thank you for calling. I'm investigating some events that happened in 1995. Would you be willing to meet with me?" "I don't know," Lisa said carefully. "The Jordans were good to me. I don't want to say anything that would hurt them." "I understand completely," Maya said. "I'm not trying to damage anyone's reputation. I'm trying to tell a story about how Jordan overcame difficult challenges. If you could help me understand what the family went through, it would show how strong they were." There was a long pause. "Okay," Lisa said finally, "but let's meet somewhere private." They agreed to meet at a small coffee shop in suburban Chicago. Maya arrived early and chose a table in the back corner where they could talk without being overheard. Lisa Washington was 61 years old, with kind eyes and a gentle manner. She had worked as a housekeeper for several wealthy families before retiring. Maya could tell she was nervous about talking. "Ms. Washington, I want you to know that I respect your loyalty to the Jordan family," Maya began. "But I think this story could actually help people understand Jordan better." Lisa nodded slowly. "Mr. Jordan and Mrs. Jordan were always good employers. They treated me with respect. That's why this was so hard to watch." "What was hard to watch?" Lisa looked around the coffee shop to make sure nobody was listening. "The stress they were under in early 1995, especially Mrs. Jordan." Maya pulled out her notebook. "Can you tell me what you observed?" "In January 1995, Mrs. Jordan started acting different," Lisa said. "She was always a strong, confident woman. But during that time, she seemed worried and scared." "What did you see that made you think she was scared?" Lisa thought for a moment. "I would hear her on the phone with her sister. She thought I couldn't hear, but I did. She was crying and talking about money problems." Maya wrote down every word. "What specifically did she say?" "One conversation I'll never forget. Mrs. Jordan told her sister that they might lose the house, not just any house, their main house in Highland Park. She said the debts were so big that even their mansion wasn't safe." Maya felt her pulse quicken. This matched what Harold Chen had told her about the family's fear of losing everything. Did she mention any specific amounts of money? Lisa nodded. Mrs. Jordan told her sister they needed $40 million just to get back to even. I remember the number because it was so huge. More money than I could even imagine. The number was almost exactly what Harold Chen had said Jordan owed. Maya felt like the pieces were fitting together perfectly. "Miss Washington, did you ever see Mr. Jordan during this time?" "Yes. And he looked terrible. He wasn't sleeping well. He was losing weight. I would find him sitting in his home office at 3 in the morning surrounded by papers and calculators. Lisa paused, remembering. One morning I came to work early and found him asleep at his desk. He had been working on financial papers all night. There were coffee cups everywhere and crumpled up papers in the trash. Maya could picture the scene. The greatest basketball player in the world, exhausted and desperate, trying to find a way out of his financial problems. Did the children notice anything? The kids were young, but they could sense something was wrong. Jeffrey, the oldest, asked me once if his family was going to have to move to a smaller house. It broke my heart. Lisa's voice became emotional. These were good people going through a terrible time, and they were trying so hard to protect their children from knowing how bad things were. Maya looked up from her notebook. When did things start to change? Around the time Mr. Jordan announced he was coming back to basketball. Suddenly, Mrs. Jordan seemed more hopeful. She wasn't crying on the phone anymore. She started smiling again. Did she say anything about the comeback? Lisa nodded. I heard her tell her sister that Michael had found a way to fix the money problems. She said basketball was going to save their family. Maya felt like she was getting confirmation of the complete story. Jordan's family had been terrified of losing everything. His comeback wasn't just about sports. It was about rescuing his wife and children from financial disaster. Ms. Washington, there's one more thing I need to ask you. During this time, did you ever see any documents or papers that mentioned specific creditors or people Jordan owed money to? Lisa was quiet for a moment. I wasn't supposed to read his papers, but sometimes I couldn't help seeing them when I was cleaning his office. What did you see? Letters from law firms, bills with huge numbers on them. And I saw one document that had a list of names, people or companies Jordan owed money to. I remember seeing Chicago Investment Partners at the top of the list. Maya's heart raced. Chicago Investment Partners was Harold Chen's group. This was independent verification of his story. Do you remember any other names on the list? There were several, but I can't remember them all. I know there was a bank and some individual names. The amounts next to each name were in the millions. Maya thanked Lisa and walked her to her car. As she drove back to her hotel, Maya felt confident that she was on the right track. Two independent sources, Harold Chen and Lisa Washington, had confirmed the same basic facts. But Maya knew she needed even more evidence. Harold could be accused of having his own agenda. Lisa might have misunderstood what she saw or heard. Maya needed to find documents or other proof that couldn't be questioned. She decided to try a different approach. Instead of looking for people who knew about Jordan's problems, she would try to find the lawyers and financial advisors who had helped him during the crisis. Maya spent that evening researching Chicago law firms that handled athlete contracts and financial problems in the 1990s. She made a list of firms and started calling them the next morning. Most law firms wouldn't talk to reporters about former clients. But Maya was persistent. She called 15 different firms before she found someone willing to help. I can't discuss specific clients, said Margaret Torres, a retired lawyer who had worked with several professional athletes. But I can tell you that financial crises among athletes were more common in the 1990s than people realize. What would typically happen in a situation like that? Athletes would borrow money for business investments, expecting huge returns. When the investments failed, they would owe much more than they could pay immediately. The only solution was usually to increase their sports earnings quickly. Margaret explained that confidential debt restructuring agreements were common. Athletes would work out payment plans with their creditors, often involving percentages of future earnings. Were these agreements usually successful? It depended on the athlete's ability to earn money and their discipline about spending. The ones who learned from their mistakes usually came out okay. The ones who didn't often ended up bankrupt. Maya asked if Margaret remembered working on any cases involving very large amounts of debt in the mid-90s. There was one case, Margaret said carefully. I can't give you details, but it involved a very famous athlete who owed more than $40 million. The case was resolved successfully, but it required the athlete to return to their sport and perform at a very high level. Margaret wouldn't say more, but the timeline and amount matched Jordan's situation perfectly. As Maya hung up the phone, she realized she had gathered compelling evidence from multiple sources. Harold Chen, Lisa Washington, and now Margaret Torres had all provided consistent information about Jordan's financial crisis and comeback. But Maya still felt like something was missing. She had the basic facts about Jordan's debt and his decision to return to basketball. But she didn't fully understand the emotional cost of the crisis. especially on Jordan's family. She needed to find someone who could help her understand how the pressure had affected Jordan personally. Someone who had seen him during his darkest moments and could describe what he was really going through. Maya looked at her notes and phone numbers. Tomorrow, she would start looking for people who had worked closely with Jordan during his comeback. Trainers, coaches, or other players who might have noticed that something was different about him. She was getting close to having everything she needed for her story. But the most important question was still unanswered. How had Jordan found the mental strength to perform under such enormous pressure? That answer would determine whether her story was just about money and sports, or about something much more inspiring, the power of the human spirit to overcome impossible odds. Maya knew she needed to understand the psychological side of Jordan's comeback. How had he managed to play at the highest level while carrying such enormous pressure? She decided to look for people who had worked with the Bulls organization during Jordan's return. Her first call was to Marcus Thompson, who had worked in the Bulls front office in the 1990s. Maya found his contact information through LinkedIn. Marcus was now 52 and worked for a sports agency in Los Angeles. "Marcus, I'm investigating Michael Jordan's 1995 comeback," Maya said when she reached him. "I'm particularly interested in what was happening behind the scenes." "That's an interesting time to research," Marcus replied carefully. "Why are you focusing on?" Maya decided to be direct. "I have evidence that Jordan was facing serious financial problems before his comeback. I'm trying to understand how that affected his return to basketball." There was a long pause. "How serious financial problems?" "More than $40 million in debt." Marcus was quiet for almost a minute. Maya wondered if he was going to hang up. "You know," Marcus said finally, "I always wondered when someone would figure that out." Maya's heart started racing. "You knew about Jordan's financial situation?" "Some of it. I worked closely with Jerry Krause, the Bulls' general manager. Jerry knew about Michael's money problems, and he told me because we had to structure some deals to help." Maya grabbed her notebook. "What kind of deals?" "Michael's comeback wasn't as spontaneous as people think. We had been talking with his representatives for weeks before his famous "I'm back" announcement." Marcus explained that Jordan's return involved complex negotiations. The Bulls wanted him back, but they also understood he was in a desperate situation. Jerry felt sorry for Michael. Marcus continued, "Here was the greatest player in team history, and he was in serious trouble through no fault of the team. We wanted to help him without making it look like charity." "How did you help?" "We structured his contract to give him the maximum amount of money as quickly as possible. Instead of spreading payments over several years, we front-loaded everything. Michael got most of his money in the first few months." Maya wrote down every detail. Did other people in the organization know why Jordan was really coming back? "A few people knew, but we kept it very quiet. Michael made everyone promise never to talk about it. He was embarrassed about the business failures." Marcus explained that Jordan's workout sessions before his comeback weren't just about getting back in basketball shape. They were also about dealing with stress and pressure. Michael would come to the practice facility at all hours, Marcus said. Sometimes at midnight, sometimes at 5 in the morning. He was working out like his life depended on it. "Because it did," Maya said. "Exactly. This wasn't about proving he could still play basketball. This was about saving his family's future." Marcus told Maya something that surprised her. Jordan's famous struggles in his first games back weren't just about being rusty from playing baseball. Michael was dealing with more pressure than any athlete should have to handle, Marcus said. Every shot he took, every game he played, he was thinking about the money he owed and the people depending on him. Maya asked Marcus about the playoffs that year, when the Bulls lost to the Orlando Magic. "That was devastating for Michael," Marcus said. "Not just because we lost, but because he knew the loss might hurt his earning potential. If his comeback looked like a failure, his endorsement deals wouldn't be as valuable. But his market value actually went up after the comeback, even though they lost." "That's right. And that saved him. Just proving he was still Michael Jordan was enough to boost his contracts and endorsement deals." But Michael didn't know that would happen. He was terrified the whole time. Marcus described watching Jordan after losses during the playoffs. Instead of his usual confident demeanor, Jordan looked worried and anxious. "One night after we lost a game to Orlando, I saw Michael sitting alone in the locker room for 2 hours after everyone else had left. He wasn't just disappointed about losing the game. He was scared about what it meant for his future." Maya felt like she was getting a complete picture of what Jordan had gone through. The comeback that everyone remembered as heroic and inspiring had actually been driven by fear and desperation. Marcus, did Jordan's teammates know about his financial problems? I don't think so. Michael was very good at hiding his personal problems. But some of the players noticed he was different. Marcus told Maya about a conversation he'd overheard between Scottie Pippen and Horace Grant. They were talking about how intense Michael was during practice. More intense than they'd ever seen him. Scottie said it was like Michael was playing for more than just winning games. He was, Maya said. After talking with Marcus, Maya felt like she understood the strategic side of Jordan's comeback, but she still wanted to know more about the emotional and psychological pressure he faced. She decided to try to contact some of Jordan's former teammates. Most of them probably wouldn't talk to her, but maybe one would be willing to share what they remembered. Maya found phone numbers for several former Bulls players. Steve Kerr was now coaching the Golden State Warriors. Maya called his office and left a message explaining that she was researching Jordan's 1995 comeback for a story about overcoming adversity. To her surprise, Kerr called her back that afternoon. "I heard you're asking about Michael's comeback," Kerr said. "What specifically do you want to know?" Maya decided to be honest about what she had discovered. "Steve, I have evidence that Jordan was facing a major financial crisis before his comeback. I'm trying to understand how that affected his performance and his relationship with teammates." Kerr was quiet for a moment. "I always suspected there was more to his comeback than missing basketball." "What made you think that?" "Michael was always competitive, but from 95 to 98 it was different. It was like he was playing for more than just winning. We all noticed it, but we figured it was just him getting older and wanting to cement his legacy." Kerr described how Jordan's intensity during practice and games seemed desperate rather than just competitive. "In our championship years after 95, Michael played like every game was life or death. We thought it was just his normal drive to win, but looking back, maybe there was more pressure on him than we realized." Maya asked Kerr about Jordan's famous flu game in the 1997 finals. "That game was incredible, obviously. But I remember thinking Michael looked sick even before he got the flu. He'd been looking run down and stressed for weeks. We all thought it was just the pressure of the playoffs. What if it was a different kind of pressure?" "That would make sense," Kerr said. "Michael carried himself differently during those championship years. Like he had weight on his shoulders that wasn't just about basketball." Kerr told Maya something that gave her chills. During the 1996 championship celebration, when everyone else was celebrating and drinking champagne, Jordan had looked more relieved than happy. "I remember thinking it was strange," Kerr said. "We had just won the championship, and Michael looked like he'd been carrying a huge burden that had finally been lifted. Because he had. Maya thought. He'd finally made enough money to start paying back his debts and secure his family's future." Maya asked Kerr about Jordan's retirement. "Michael said he was going out on top, and everyone believed that. But there might have been another reason. If he'd solved his financial problems by then, maybe he felt like he could finally stop playing." After her conversation with Kerr, Maya called Dennis Rodman. She found his contact information through a sports marketing agency. Rodman was known for being unpredictable, but he was also honest about things other players wouldn't discuss. "Dennis, I'm investigating Michael Jordan's comeback in 1995. I've discovered some information about financial pressure he was under. Did you notice anything different about him during that time?" Rodman laughed. "Mike was always under pressure. That's what made him great. But was there a different kind of pressure? Something that wasn't just about basketball?" Rodman's tone became more serious. "You know what? Yeah, there was something. Mike carried weight that wasn't just about basketball. I never knew what it was. But you could see it in his eyes." "What do you mean?" "Most players, when they're worried about something, they talk about it or act out. Mike kept everything inside. But if you knew how to look, you could see he was dealing with something heavy." Rodman told Maya about a conversation he'd had with Jordan during the 1996 season. "We were on the team bus after a game, and Mike was staring out the window. He looked tired and stressed. I asked him what was wrong, and he said, 'Dennis, sometimes winning isn't just about being the best. Sometimes it's about survival.'" Maya wrote down the quote word for word. It perfectly captured what she was learning about Jordan's mindset during his comeback years. "Did he say anything else about survival?" "He told me that people think professional athletes have it easy, but sometimes they're fighting battles that nobody knows about. He said the hardest games are the ones you have to win, not the ones you want to win." After talking with Rodman, Maya felt like she finally understood the complete story. Jordan's comeback wasn't just about returning to basketball. It was about using his athletic ability to solve a life-threatening financial crisis. The famous "I'm back" announcement wasn't spontaneous. It was the result of weeks of planning and negotiation. Jordan, the Bulls organization, and his financial advisors had worked together to create a strategy that would allow him to earn enough money to pay his debts. But the emotional cost had been enormous. Jordan had played the greatest basketball of his career, while carrying more pressure than any athlete should have to bear. Maya realized that her story was about more than just money and sports. It was about the power of the human spirit to transform fear into strength, desperation into determination, and failure into the greatest comeback in sports history. She looked at her notes from the past week. She had interviews with Harold Chen, Lisa Washington, Marcus Thompson, Steve Kerr, and Dennis Rodman. She had documentary evidence and multiple sources confirming the same basic facts. Maya felt confident that she had enough evidence to write her story. But she still wanted to talk to one more person, someone who could help her understand how Jordan had found the mental strength to perform under such incredible pressure. She needed to find a sports psychologist or mental performance coach who had worked with Jordan during his comeback years. Someone who could explain how the greatest competitor in sports history had turned his biggest crisis into his greatest triumph. Maya spent the morning researching sports psychologists who had worked in Chicago during the 1990s. She needed someone who understood how athletes dealt with extreme pressure, especially pressure that came from outside of sport. After several phone calls, she found Dr. Jennifer Lee. Dr. Lee had worked as a sports psychiatrist with several professional teams in Chicago during the 1990s. She was now retired and living in a suburb outside the city. "Dr. Lee, I'm investigating Michael Jordan's 1995 comeback," Maya said when she reached her. "I've discovered that he was under enormous financial pressure at the time. I'm trying to understand how that kind of stress affects an athlete's performance." "That's a very interesting question," Dr. Lee replied. "I can't talk about specific patients, of course, but I can discuss how financial pressure affects athletes in general." "What's the difference between game pressure and financial pressure?" Dr. Lee paused, thinking carefully. "Game pressure is something athletes are trained to handle. They expect it, and they usually know how to channel it into better performance. Financial pressure is different. It threatens everything outside of sports: family, security, identity." Maya wrote down every word. "How does that affect performance?" "It can go two ways. Some athletes crumble under that kind of pressure. They can't focus on their sport because they're too worried about everything else. But others, the truly great competitors, find a way to use that fear as fuel." "What do you mean by fuel?" "When someone's entire world is threatened, it can either paralyze them or make them stronger than they've ever been. The athletes who survive are the ones who can turn that terror into determination." Dr. Lee explained that financial pressure was especially dangerous for athletes because it made every performance feel like life or death. "Imagine playing a basketball game knowing that if you lose, your family might lose their home," Dr. Lee said. "That's not normal sports pressure. That's survival pressure." Maya thought about Jordan shooting free throws alone in the dark gym after his meeting with the investors. How would that affect someone's training and preparation? They would probably train obsessively. Working out becomes a way to deal with anxiety and fear. The gym becomes the only place where they feel in control. That matched what Maya had learned about Jordan's unusual workout schedule during his comeback preparation. "Dr. Lee, if someone was playing under that kind of pressure, would other people notice?" "Definitely. Their intensity would be different, more desperate. They might have trouble sleeping or eating. They might seem distracted or worried even during good times." Maya remembered Steve Kerr saying that Jordan had looked sick and stressed even before the flu game. Would the pressure affect their health? Absolutely. Chronic stress can cause physical illness. Headaches, stomach problems, fatigue. The body responds to emotional pressure just like physical pressure. After talking with Dr. Lee, Maya felt like she understood how Jordan had managed to perform under such incredible stress. His famous competitiveness wasn't just about winning games. It was about survival. But Maya wanted to find someone who had actually observed Jordan during this period. Someone who could describe specific examples of how the pressure affected him. She decided to look for people who had worked at the Bulls practice facility during Jordan's comeback. Not players or coaches, but support staff who might have seen Jordan when he thought nobody was watching. Maya found contact information for Tim Rodriguez. Tim was Tommy's son, the security guard she had interviewed earlier. Tim had been a teenager in 1995, working part-time at the Bulls facility during school breaks. "Tim, your father told me about some meetings Michael Jordan had at the practice facility in 1995. You would have been working there around that time. Do you remember anything unusual about Jordan's behavior?" "Oh yeah," Tim said immediately. "That was when Mr. Jordan started acting really different." "Different how?" "He used to be confident and relaxed around the facility. But starting in early 1995, he seemed worried all the time, like he had something heavy on his mind." Tim told Maya about several incidents that had stuck in his memory. "One time I found Mr. Jordan sitting in his car in the parking lot at 2 in the morning, just sitting there staring at the building. When I asked if he was okay, he said he couldn't sleep and came to the gym to think." "Did he say what he was thinking about?" "He told me once that he'd never been so scared in his life. I thought he meant scared of not being good at basketball anymore. But now I think maybe he was scared of something else." Tim described watching Jordan during his comeback preparation workouts. Instead of his usual focused but relaxed demeanor, Jordan seemed frantic and desperate. He would shoot the same shot over and over again, like he was trying to prove something to himself. And if he missed a few in a row, he'd get angry in a way I'd never seen before. Maya wrote down Tim's observations. They matched perfectly with what Dr. Lee had told her about how financial pressure affects athletes. "Tim, did you ever hear Jordan talking on the phone during this time?" "A few times. He would use the office phone late at night when he thought nobody was around. But I had to walk past the office sometimes for security checks." "What did you hear?" "He sounded like he was begging someone for more time. He kept saying things like, 'I just need a few more months and I promise I'll pay everything back.'" Tim's story gave Maya chills. She could picture Jordan, the most confident athlete in the world, pleading with creditors for more time to pay his debts. "One night was really bad," Tim continued. "Mr. Jordan was on the phone for almost an hour. When he hung up, he put his head in his hands and just sat there. I'd never seen him look so defeated." "When was this?" "February 1995, right before he announced his comeback. I remember because it was around Valentine's Day." That timeline matched perfectly with Harold Chen's story about the ultimatum meeting. Maya thanked Tim and hung up. She now had a complete picture of Jordan's emotional state during the crisis. The greatest competitor in sports history had been reduced to begging for more time and sitting alone in parking lots at 2 in the morning. But Maya still wanted to understand one more thing. How had Jordan found the mental strength to not just survive this crisis, but to use it as motivation for the greatest run of his career? She decided to call Dr. Patricia Williams again, the sports psychologist she had talked to at the beginning of her investigation. "Dr. Williams, I've learned a lot more about Jordan's situation in 1995. I now know he was facing enormous financial pressure. What I don't understand is how he turned that pressure into the motivation for 3 more championships." "That's a fascinating question," Dr. Williams said. "What you're describing sounds like someone who was able to transform trauma into triumph." "How does that work?" "Some people, when faced with their worst fears, discover reserves of strength they never knew they had. The threat to everything they care about becomes the fuel for extraordinary achievement." Dr. Williams explained that the greatest athletes often perform best when they have something important to fight for beyond just winning. When Jordan came back in 1995, he wasn't just playing for championships or personal glory. He was playing for his family's survival. That's a much more powerful motivation. But how did he handle the stress without it destroying his performance? By channeling it. Every time he felt scared or worried, he probably turned that energy into harder training, more focus, better preparation. Fear became his competitive advantage. Dr. Williams told Maya something that made everything click into place. The Jordan who came back in 1995 was probably a better player than the one who retired in 1993. Not because his skills had improved, but because his motivation was deeper. He was playing for something that mattered more than basketball. Maya thought about Jordan's performance from 1996 to 1998. 3 consecutive championships with some of the most dominant basketball ever played. She had always wondered where that level of sustained excellence came from. Now she understood. Jordan hadn't been playing to prove he was the best basketball player in the world. He'd been playing to save everything he cared about. Maya looked at her notes from the past week of investigation. She had talked to creditors, family employees, team officials, teammates, and sports psychologists. Every piece of evidence pointed to the same conclusion. Michael Jordan's comeback wasn't about missing basketball. It was about survival. And that survival instinct had driven him to achievements that pure talent alone could never have reached. Maya realized she had found the story she'd been looking for. Not just a story about money and debt, but a story about the power of the human spirit to transform fear into greatness. She started typing on her laptop, organizing all the evidence she had gathered. The facts were incredible, but the real story was even more inspiring. Jordan had faced his worst nightmare, the possibility of losing everything he had built for his family. Instead of being destroyed by that fear, he had used it to fuel the greatest individual performance in sports history. Maya smiled as she worked on her outline. This wasn't just a story about Michael Jordan. It was a story that could inspire anyone facing impossible odds. It proved that sometimes our biggest failures and fears can become the source of our greatest triumphs. But Maya knew she still had one more crucial step before she could publish her story. She needed to verify her facts one more time and try to get a response from Jordan himself. She had built a compelling case based on interviews and evidence. But giving Jordan a chance to respond would be the right thing to do, both journalistically and personally. Maya looked at her phone. Tomorrow, she would make the most important call of her investigation. She would ask Michael Jordan to confirm or deny the biggest story of her career. Maya woke up early the next morning. But she didn't call Jordan right away. She realized there was still one important part of the story she hadn't fully explored: how the financial crisis had affected Jordan's children and his marriage to Juanita. Lisa Washington had mentioned that the children could sense something was wrong. Maya wanted to understand more about how the family had coped during those difficult months. She decided to look for people who had worked with Jordan's children during 1995, teachers, coaches, or babysitters who might have observed changes in their behavior. Maya started by researching the private schools that Jordan's children had attended in the Chicago area. She found contact information for Highland Park Elementary School, where Jeffrey Jordan had been a student in. After several phone calls, Maya was connected to Mrs. Angela Davis, who had been Jeffrey's teacher that year. Mrs. Davis was now retired but remembered the Jordan family well. Jeffrey was such a sweet boy, Mrs. Davis said. Very smart and well-behaved. But I do remember a period in early 1995 when he seemed distracted and worried. What did you notice? Jeffrey started asking unusual questions about money and families. He wanted to know if people could lose their houses if they owed money. He asked if families ever had to move to smaller places because of financial problems. Maya felt sad thinking about Jordan's young son worrying about his family's security. Did he seem scared? Not scared exactly, but concerned. Like he was trying to understand something that was too adult for him to really grasp. Mrs. Davis told Maya about a conversation that had stuck with her for almost 30 years. One day after school, Jeffrey asked me if his daddy might have to get a different job. When I asked why he thought that, he said he'd heard his parents talking about needing money for something important. What did you tell him? I assured him that his father was very successful and that he didn't need to worry about grown-up problems. But I could tell something at home was causing him stress. Mrs. Davis also remembered that Jeffrey's mother, Juanita, had looked tired and worried during parent conferences that year. Mrs. Jordan was usually very composed and confident. But in the spring of 1995, she seemed like she was carrying a heavy burden. She kept asking about Jeffrey's emotional well-being and whether he seemed happy at school. After talking with Mrs. Davis, Maya felt even more sympathy for what the Jordan family had gone through. Even the children had been affected by the financial crisis, even though their parents tried to protect them. Maya's next call was to Rosa Martinez, whose mother Carmen had worked as a cleaning lady in Jordan's office building. Rosa was now 38 and worked as a nurse in Chicago. Maya had found her contact information through social media. Rosa, your mother mentioned to me that she worked in Michael Jordan's office building in 1995. She said you sometimes babysat for the Jordan children. Do you remember that time? Oh yes, Rosa said. That was when I was in college. The Jordans were always nice to me, but there was a period when the whole family seemed really stressed. What did you observe? Mrs. Jordan looked like she hadn't been sleeping well. She was always checking on the kids, making sure they were okay, and she would get phone calls that seemed to upset her. Rosa told Maya about an incident that had worried her at the time. One evening when I was babysitting, Mrs. Jordan got a phone call that made her start crying. She tried to hide it from the kids, But Jeffrey noticed. He asked me why his mom was sad. What did you tell him? I said sometimes grown-ups have things to worry about that kids don't need to think about. But Jeffrey was smart. He knew something was wrong. Rosa also remembered that the Jordan children's behavior had changed during this period. Jeffrey became very protective of his younger siblings. Like he felt responsible for making sure everyone was okay. That's a lot of pressure for a little boy. Maya asked Rosa about the time when Jordan announced his comeback to basketball. Everything changed after that announcement, Rosa said. Mrs. Jordan seemed happier and more relaxed. The whole family felt lighter, like a big weight had been lifted off their shoulders. After her conversation with Rosa, Maya realized she wanted to understand more about how the crisis had affected Jordan's marriage. She had heard that Juanita Jordan had been considering divorce during this period, not because she didn't love Michael, but to protect herself and the children financially. Maya found contact information for Sarah Kim, a family counselor who had worked with several high-profile families in Chicago during the 1990s. Sarah was now 62 and still practicing in the Chicago area. Sarah, I'm investigating a story about family stress during financial crises. I can't discuss specific clients, but I'm wondering if you could help me understand how financial problems affect marriages, especially when children are involved. Financial stress is one of the leading causes of divorce, Sarah said. When a family's security is threatened, it puts enormous strain on the relationship between spouses. How do couples typically handle that kind of pressure? It depends on their communication and trust. Some couples pull together and support each other. Others blame each other or start making individual plans to protect themselves. Sarah explained that wealthy families often faced unique challenges during financial crises. When you're used to having financial security, the threat of losing it can be especially traumatic. Children who have grown up with privilege can be deeply affected by sudden instability. What about the spouse who isn't directly responsible for the financial problems? They often feel helpless and angry. They love their partner, but they also have to protect their children. Sometimes they start making backup plans, like consulting divorce lawyers or setting aside money in separate accounts. Maya thought about what Lisa Washington had said about Juanita Jordan looking into smaller houses and meeting with lawyers. Is it common for spouses to consider divorce during financial crises even if they still love each other? Absolutely. It's not about love anymore. It's about survival and protecting the children. A divorce might be the only way to ensure that the family's assets can't all be lost to creditors. Sarah's explanation helped Maya understand why Juanita Jordan had been so scared and why she might have been making contingency plans. After talking with Sarah, Maya felt like she had a complete picture of how Jordan's financial crisis had affected his entire family. It wasn't just about Jordan's stress and pressure. It was about a family in survival mode. The children had been worried about losing their home. Juanita had been terrified about their future security. Even Jordan's extended family and household staff had been affected by the tension and fear. Maya realized that Jordan's comeback was about more than just paying back money. It was about restoring his family's sense of security and stability. Every championship he won from 1996 to 1998 was a step toward rebuilding the foundation that had been shaken by the financial crisis. She thought about Jordan's famous intensity during those championship years. Everyone had attributed it to his competitive nature and desire for greatness. But Maya now understood that it was also about making sure his family never had to experience that kind of fear again. Maya looked at her notes from all her interviews. She had talked to creditors, employees, teammates, coaches, teachers, babysitters, and counselors. Every conversation had added another piece to the puzzle. The story wasn't just about Michael Jordan overcoming financial problems. It was about a family that had been pushed to the edge of disaster and found a way to survive and thrive. Jordan's greatest achievement wasn't his scoring records or his championships. It was keeping his family together and secure during the most difficult period of their lives. Maya felt emotional thinking about everything the Jordan family had endured. The public had seen only the glory and success. Nobody knew about the sleepless nights, the worried children, the tears, and the fear. But they had survived. More than survived. They had used the crisis as motivation to achieve even greater success. Maya picked up her phone and looked at Jordan's contact information. She had been planning to call him to ask about his financial problems. But now she realized she wanted to ask him about something more important. She wanted to ask him about courage, about finding strength during the darkest moments, about turning fear into fuel and failure into triumph. Maya took a deep breath and dialed Jordan's number. It was time to have the most important conversation of her career. Maya's hands were shaking slightly as she dialed Jordan's number. She had practiced what she wanted to say, but her heart was still beating fast. This conversation would determine whether her story would ever be published. The phone rang 3 times before a familiar voice answered. "This is Michael." "Mr. Jordan, this is Maya Chen from the Charlotte Observer. We spoke at the golf tournament last week. Do you have a few minutes to talk?" There was a pause. Maya could hear Jordan thinking. "The reporter who was asking about my spending habits. What do you want to talk about now?" Maya took a deep breath. "Mr. Jordan, I've been investigating what you said about your 1995 comeback. About how it was connected to money but not in the way people think. I've learned some things that I'd like to discuss with you." Another pause. Longer this time. "What kind of things?" "I've spoken with Harold Chen in Arizona. I've talked to people who worked for your family in 1995. I know about the debt." "Mr. Jordan, I know about the $43 million in the ultimatum you received in February." Maya held her breath. She could hear Jordan breathing on the other end of the line, but he didn't speak for almost a minute. "How much do you know?" Jordan asked finally. His voice was quiet and serious. "I know about the failed business investments. I know about the meetings with investors. I know how scared your family was and how the pressure affected your children. I know that your comeback wasn't about missing basketball, it was about survival." Jordan was quiet again. Maya could imagine him deciding whether to hang up or keep talking. "Miss Chen, why are you investigating this? What do you want from me?" Maya had prepared for this question. "Mr. Jordan, I started investigating because I thought there might be an interesting story about your business deals. But what I found is something much more important. I found a story about courage and family and turning your worst crisis into your greatest achievement." "Is that how you see it?" "Yes, sir. I think what you accomplished from 1995 to 1998 is even more impressive when people understand what you were really fighting for. You weren't just playing for championships. You were playing to save your family's future." Jordan was quiet for a moment. "Miss Chen, can you meet me in person? This isn't a conversation I want to have over the phone." Maya's heart jumped. "Of course. When and where?" "Tomorrow morning. 10 o'clock. My office in Charlotte." "And Miss Chen?" "Yes? Come alone. No cameras, no other reporters. Just you and your notebook." Maya barely slept that night. She kept going over her questions and checking her notes. This meeting would determine everything, whether Jordan would confirm her story, deny it, or ask her not to publish it. The next morning, Maya arrived at Jordan's office building 15 minutes early. She sat in her car, trying to calm her nerves. This was the biggest moment of her career. Jordan's office was on the top floor of a modern building in downtown Charlotte. Maya took the elevator up, her notebook and recorder in her bag. When the doors opened, she was greeted by a receptionist who led her to a conference room. Jordan was already there, sitting at a large wooden table. He looked older than he had at the golf tournament, more serious. He was wearing a dark suit and looked like a successful businessman rather than a retired athlete. "Miss Chen," Jordan stood up and shook her hand. "Thank you for coming." Maya sat down across from him. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me, Mr. Jordan." Jordan looked directly at her. "Before we start, I need to know something. What are you planning to do with this story?" Maya had thought carefully about this question. "Mr. Jordan, I want to tell the truth about what happened in 1995, but I want to tell it in a way that shows your strength and courage, not your problems. I think people will be inspired by how you overcame such a difficult situation." Jordan leaned back in his chair. "Do you understand what you're asking me to do? I've kept this secret for almost 30 years. I've never told anyone the complete truth about why I came back to basketball." "I understand it's difficult," Maya said, "but I think the truth makes your achievements even more remarkable." Jordan was quiet for a long time. He looked out the window at the Charlotte skyline, then back at Maya. "Miss Chen, I'm going to tell you something that I've never told any reporter. But first, I need your promise that you'll tell this story the right way." Maya nodded. "I promise." Jordan stood up and walked to the window. "You're right about the debt. You're right about Harold Chen and the ultimatum. You're right about how scared my family was." Maya pulled out her notebook and recorder. "Can I record this?" Jordan nodded. "Yes. I want people to hear this in my own words." Maya turned on her recorder and placed it on the table between them. "The hardest part wasn't the money," Jordan began. "The hardest part was seeing my wife scared and my children worried. I had always been able to protect my family, and suddenly I couldn't." Jordan's voice became emotional. "One night in February 1995, I found my son Jeffrey in his room, crying. When I asked what was wrong, he said he was scared we might have to move to a smaller house. That broke my heart." Maya wrote down every word, but she could feel tears in her own eyes. "That's when I knew I had to find a way to fix this," Jordan continued. "Not for my pride or my reputation, but for my family's security." Jordan explained that the decision to return to basketball wasn't easy. He had enjoyed playing baseball and wasn't sure he could still compete at the highest level in basketball. But Harold Chen was right. Basketball was the only way I could make enough money quickly enough to pay back what I owed. "Were you confident you could still play at a championship level?" Jordan smiled for the first time during their conversation. "I wasn't confident about anything. I was terrified. What if I came back and played badly? What if I embarrassed myself? What if I couldn't help my team win?" "But you did win. 3 more championships." "Yes, but not right away. We lost in the playoffs in 1995, remember? That was devastating. I thought maybe I had made a mistake." Jordan sat back down at the table. "But something changed after that loss. I realized that even though we didn't win the championship, my comeback had already achieved something important." "What was that?" "It proved I was still Michael Jordan. That was enough to boost my endorsement deals and renegotiate contracts. I was going to be able to pay back my debts and take care of my family." Jordan explained that the 1995 playoff loss had actually motivated him for the next 3 years. "I knew I could survive financially now, but I wanted to prove that I could still be the best basketball player in the world. The pressure was different after 1995. Before, I was playing because I had to. After 1995, I was playing because I wanted to." Maya looked up from her notes. "Mr. Jordan, why are you telling me this now? Why after keeping it secret for so long?" Jordan thought for a moment. "Because I'm tired of carrying this secret, and because I think it might help other people who are facing difficult situations." "What do you mean?" "Everyone thinks success is about never failing. But that's not true. Success is about what you do after you fail. How you respond when everything goes wrong." Jordan leaned forward. "I failed as a businessman in the early 1990s. I made terrible decisions and put my family at risk. But instead of giving up, I found a way to use that failure as motivation. The fear of losing everything became fuel for your greatest achievements." Exactly. The championships from 1996 to 1998 weren't just about basketball. They were about proving to myself and my family that we could overcome anything. Maya realized she was witnessing something extraordinary. One of the most private athletes in sports history was opening up about his most difficult period. "Mr. Jordan, what do you want people to learn from your story?" Jordan stood up again and walked back to the window. "I want them to know that everyone faces crises. Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is how you respond." He turned back to Maya. "I also want people to understand that my greatest victories weren't the championships or the records. My greatest victory was keeping my family together and secure during the worst time in our lives." Maya felt like she finally understood the complete story. Jordan's comeback wasn't just about sports or money. It was about love, responsibility, and the power of determination. "There's one more thing," Jordan said. "I want you to know that Harold Chen and his investors weren't the bad guys in this story. They actually helped me by giving me a chance to fix my mistakes instead of just taking legal action. They could have forced you into bankruptcy. Yes, and that would have destroyed everything. Instead, they gave me an opportunity to earn back what I owed. I'll always be grateful for that." Maya looked at her recorder to make sure it was still running. "Mr. Jordan, is there anything else you want people to know?" Jordan smiled. "Just that the story everyone knows about my comeback is true, but it's not complete. Yes, I missed basketball. Yes, I wanted to prove I could still compete. But the real reason I came back was love. Love for my family and determination to protect them." Maya felt like she had just been given the greatest gift of her career. Not just an exclusive story, but a story that would inspire millions of people. "Thank you for trusting me with this," Maya said. Jordan shook her hand again. "Thank you for understanding what this story really means." It's not about basketball or money. It's about what we're willing to do for the people we love. As Maya left Jordan's office, she realized that her investigation had led her to something much bigger than she had expected. She had set out to find a story about financial problems and basketball. Instead, she had found a story about the human spirit and the power of love to overcome any obstacle. Maya spent the next 3 days writing her story. She had hours of recorded interviews, dozens of pages of notes, and the most exclusive quote in sports journalism history. But she wanted to make sure she told the story exactly right. Before publishing, Maya decided to reach out to some of Jordan's former teammates one more time. Now that she knew the complete truth, she wanted to see if they had noticed anything that made more sense in context. She called Steve Kerr again. "Steve, I wanted to follow up on our conversation about Michael's intensity during the championship years. I've learned some things that might explain what you observed." "What did you learn?" Maya explained what Jordan had told her about his financial crisis and how it motivated his comeback. Kerr listened without interrupting. "That explains everything," Kerr said when Maya finished. "I always wondered why Michael seemed to be playing for something bigger than just basketball." "What do you remember specifically?" "The 1996 season was different from our first championship run in 1991. Michael was more focused, more desperate. Every practice, every game felt like life or death to him." Kerr told Maya about the 1996 NBA Finals against the Seattle Supersonics. The Bulls won the series 4-2. But Kerr remembered that Jordan seemed more relieved than excited after they won. "When we won that championship, Michael didn't celebrate the way you'd expect. He looked like a huge weight had been lifted off his shoulders. Now I understand why." Maya asked about the famous 1997 flu game against the Utah Jazz. "Michael was sick, obviously, but looking back, I think he'd been running on stress and adrenaline for so long that his body was breaking down. The pressure he was under wasn't just about basketball." Kerr explained that Jordan's leadership during those championship years was different too. Michael had always been a great leader, but from 1996 to 1998, he led like someone who understood what it meant to lose everything. He pushed us harder because he knew how important winning was, not just for glory, but for survival. Maya also called Dennis Rodman to get his perspective on the championship years. "Now that you mention it," Rodman said, "Mike was playing like every game was his last chance. I thought it was just his competitive nature, but maybe there was more to it." Rodman told Maya about a conversation he'd had with Jordan before the 1998 finals. "We were in the locker room, and Mike looked exhausted. Not physically tired, but emotionally drained. He told me, 'Dennis, I need this championship more than people realize.' I thought he was talking about his legacy, but maybe he was talking about something else." Maya realized that Jordan's famous intensity during the 1990s wasn't just about being competitive. It was about proving that he could overcome his biggest failure and provide security for his family. She decided to call Marcus Thompson, the former Bulls front office employee, to ask about the business side of Jordan's championships. "Marcus, I've confirmed the story about Michael's financial problems. I'm wondering if you can tell me how the championships affected his earning potential."
"Oh, absolutely," Marcus said.
"Each championship made Michael more valuable. Not just for the Bulls, but for endorsements, appearances, everything." Marcus explained that Jordan's comeback and subsequent championships had created a financial snowball effect. The 1996 championship alone probably increased Michael's endorsement value by $50 million. Companies wanted to be associated with the greatest comeback story in sports history. So winning wasn't just about paying back his debts. No, it was about securing his family's future forever. By the time Michael retired in 1998, he had not only paid back everything he owed, but built a foundation that would keep his family wealthy for generations. Maya asked about Jordan's spending habits after he solved his financial problems. "Michael became much more careful with money after 1995, Marcus said. "Every major purchase was planned and calculated. He learned the difference between being rich and being wealthy." Maya realized that this was why Jordan's current spending seemed so extravagant to outsiders. He wasn't being reckless with money. He was enjoying the security he had fought so hard to achieve. She called Jordan one more time to ask about his life after solving the financial crisis. "Mr. Jordan, how did your relationship with money change after you paid back your debts?" "Everything changed," Jordan said. "Before 1995, I thought money was just a way to keep score. After 1995, I understood that money was about security and family, and responsibility. Jordan explained that his business investments after 1998 were completely different from his earlier deals. I stopped trying to prove I could be successful at everything. Instead, I focused on things I understood and people I trusted. Every decision was about building something that would last. Maya asked about his current lifestyle and spending habits. When people see me buy expensive things now, they think I'm being wasteful. But every purchase is part of a plan. That $15 million house? It's not just a house. It's an investment that will be worth $25 million in 10 years. Jordan explained that he had learned to make his money work for him instead of just spending it. The art collection, the cars, the businesses. Everything is designed to either maintain or increase value. I never want my family to face financial uncertainty again. Maya asked Jordan about the most important lesson he learned from his financial crisis. I learned that success isn't about never failing. It's about how you respond when you do fail. And I learned that the most important victories happen off the court. What do you mean? My greatest championship wasn't in 1991 or 1996 or 1998. My greatest championship was keeping my family together and secure during the worst time in our lives. Jordan told Maya that he had quietly helped dozens of other athletes avoid similar financial problems. I started a financial education program for young players. I personally counsel guys about money management. I don't want anyone else to go through what my family went through. Maya realized that Jordan's financial crisis had not only made him a better basketball player, but also a better person. He had used his experience to help others avoid the same mistakes. Mr. Jordan, when you look back at your career now, how do you think about the championship years from 1990? Those championships mean more to me than the earlier ones. Jordan said, in 1991 I won because I was talented and competitive. In 1996, 1997, and 1998 I won because I had to. I was playing for my family's survival and future. Jordan explained that the pressure of those championship years had actually made him a better player. When you're playing for something bigger than yourself, you find levels of performance you didn't know existed. Every shot mattered, because it wasn't just about winning a game, it was about protecting everything I loved. Maya asked Jordan about his retirement at night. By then, I had accomplished what I set out to do. I had paid back every penny I owed, plus interest. I had secured my family's financial future. I had proven that failure doesn't have to be permanent. So, your second retirement was really about completing your mission? Exactly. I could finally retire knowing that my family would never have to worry about money again. That's a better feeling than any championship ring. As Maya finished her final interviews, she realized that Jordan's story was even more inspiring than she had initially thought. He hadn't just overcome financial problems. He had transformed a personal crisis into a mission to protect and provide for his family. The championships from 1996 to 1998 weren't just about basketball excellence. They were about love, determination, and the power of the human spirit to turn fear into fuel. Maya looked at her completed story. It was more than just sports journalism. It was a story about redemption, family, and the true meaning of success. She thought about the title Jordan had given himself during their interview. His greatest championship was keeping his family together during their worst crisis. Maya realized that her story would help people understand that real champions aren't just people who never lose. They're people who find a way to win when it matters most. As she prepared to publish her article, Maya felt proud of what she had discovered. She had started with a simple question about spending habits and uncovered one of the most inspiring stories in sports history. Michael Jordan's comeback wasn't just about basketball. It was about what people are capable of achieving when they're fighting for something bigger than themselves. Maya was putting the finishing touches on her story when she realized there was one more piece of the puzzle she hadn't fully explored. Everyone knew that Jordan retired again in 1998, saying he wanted to go out on top. But Maya wondered if there was more to that decision. She called Jordan one final time. Mr. Jordan, I have one last question about your 1998 retirement. Was paying off your debts part of your decision to retire when you did? Jordan was quiet for a moment. You're very thorough, Miss Chen. Yes, that was a big part of it. Can you explain what you mean? By 1998, I had accomplished everything I set out to do when I came back in 1995. I had paid back every penny I owed, plus interest. I had built enough wealth to ensure my family would never face financial uncertainty again. Jordan explained that his 1998 retirement was very different from his first retirement in 1993. I retired because I was emotionally drained and needed a break. In 1998, I retired because I had completed my mission. Maya asked what that mission was. To prove that failure doesn't have to be permanent. To show my family that I could fix the problems I had created, and to build a foundation that would protect them forever. Jordan told Maya that the decision to retire had actually been made months before the 1990. I knew during the 1997-98 season that it would be my last, not because I couldn't play anymore, but because I had achieved what I came back to achieve. Maya realized that Jordan's famous Last Dance season had been exactly that, a farewell tour by someone who had completed everything he needed to do. The 1998 championship was special because it represented the end of the most important journey of my life, Jordan said. Not just my basketball career, but my journey from failure to redemption. Maya asked Jordan about his financial situation when he retired in. I wasn't just financially secure. I was wealthy in a way that could never be threatened again. My investments were solid. My endorsement deals were long-term, and I had learned how to manage money properly. Jordan explained that he had also set up financial education funds and trust accounts for his children. I wanted to make sure that my kids would understand the value of money and never make the mistakes I made. They would be financially secure, but they would also be financially smart. Maya asked about his post-retirement business ventures. After 1998, I could take calculated risks again because I had a solid foundation. But I never forgot the lessons I learned from my failures in the early 1990s. Jordan told Maya about his purchase of the Charlotte Hornets basketball team. Buying the Hornets wasn't just about staying involved in basketball. It was about making a long-term investment that would continue building wealth for my family. Maya realized that Jordan's current status as a billionaire wasn't just about smart investments. It was about the discipline and caution he had learned from his financial crisis. Everything I've done since 1998 has been built on the foundation I created during those championship years, Jordan said. The crisis taught me that success isn't about how much money you make. It's about how well you protect and grow what you have. Maya asked Jordan about his current spending habits and lifestyle. When people see me spend money now, they think I'm being extravagant. But every major purchase is part of a strategic plan. I learned to make my money work for me instead of just spending it for pleasure. Jordan explained that his expensive cars, houses, and art collections were all investments designed to maintain or increase in value. The difference between being rich and being wealthy is that wealthy people think about every financial decision in terms of long-term consequences. I learned that lesson the hard way. Maya asked Jordan what advice he would give to young athletes about money management. First, understand that your athletic career is temporary, but your financial decisions are permanent. Second, don't try to prove you're smart by investing in things you don't understand. Third, always have enough saved to support your family even if your career ends tomorrow. Jordan told Maya that he had personally counseled over 100 professional athletes about financial planning. I don't want anyone else to experience what my family went through in 1995. If my story can help prevent that, then maybe my crisis served a bigger purpose. Maya asked Jordan about his legacy and how he wanted to be remembered. Obviously, I want to be remembered as a great basketball player. But more importantly, I want to be remembered as someone who showed that you can overcome your worst failures. Jordan explained that his financial crisis had actually made him a better person. Before 1995, I thought I was invincible. I thought I could succeed at anything without really trying. The crisis taught me humility, discipline, and the importance of family. Maya asked Jordan if he ever regretted the business decisions that led to his financial problems. I regret that my family had to go through that stress and uncertainty, but I don't regret the lessons I learned. Those failures made me stronger and wiser. Jordan told Maya that his financial crisis had also improved his relationships. When you're facing the possibility of losing everything, you realize what really matters. My relationship with Juanita became stronger because we went through that crisis together. My connection with my children deepened because I was fighting for their future. Maya asked about Juanita's role during the crisis and recovery. Juanita was my rock during that time. She could have left me when things got bad, but she stayed and supported me. She believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself. Jordan explained that Juanita had been involved in all his financial decisions. I learned that marriage is a partnership, especially when it comes to money. Juanita helped me make smarter choices and avoided some of the ego-driven decisions that got me in trouble before. Maya asked Jordan about his children's understanding of what the family had gone through. My kids were young during the crisis, but they remember some of it. As they got older, I explained what happened and what I learned. I wanted them to understand that even successful people face serious problems sometimes. Jordan told Maya that his children had learned valuable lessons from his experience. They saw that hard work and determination can overcome almost any obstacle. They also learned not to take financial security for granted. Maya asked Jordan what he was most proud of when he looked back at his career. "I'm proud of the championships and the records, but I'm most proud of the fact that I turned my biggest failure into my greatest success. Not just in basketball, but in life." Jordan explained that his crisis had given him a deeper understanding of what success really meant. Success isn't about never failing. It's about what you do after you fail. It's about whether you give up or find a way to come back stronger. Maya asked Jordan what message he wanted people to take from his story. "I want people to know that everyone faces crises. Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is how you respond. Do you give up, or do you find a way to turn that crisis into fuel for something better?" Jordan told Maya that he hoped his story would inspire people in all walks of life, not just athletes. Whether you're facing financial problems, health problems, relationship problems, or career problems, the same principles apply. Don't give up. Find people who will support you. Learn from your mistakes, and use your fear as motivation to create something better. As Maya finished her final interview with Jordan, she realized that his story was bigger than sports or money. It was a story about the human capacity to transform failure into triumph through determination, love, and hard work. Jordan's financial crisis had led to his greatest basketball achievements. But more importantly, it had led to his greatest personal growth. He had become a better husband, father, businessman, and person because of what he had endured. Maya looked at her completed story. She had set out to investigate Jordan's spending habits and discovered one of the most inspiring stories of redemption and family love in modern history. The real reason for Jordan's second retirement wasn't just about going out on top. It was about completing the most important mission of his life, transforming failure into success, and ensuring his family's security forever. Maya smiled as she prepared to submit her story for publication. She had found something much more valuable than just a sports scoop. She had found proof that the human spirit could overcome any obstacle when motivated by love and determination. Maya's story was almost ready for publication when she received an unexpected phone call. It was her Uncle David. "Maya, we need to talk. Can you meet me for lunch today?" Maya could hear the worry in his voice. "Of course. Uncle David, is everything okay? Just meet me at Tony's restaurant on 5th Street. 1 o'clock. And Maya, bring your notebook." Maya arrived at the restaurant wondering what her uncle wanted to discuss. Uncle David was already there, sitting at a corner table away from other customers. He looked nervous and tired. "Uncle David, what's going on?" He waited until Maya sat down before speaking. "I heard you've been investigating Michael's financial problems from..." Maya felt her stomach tighten. "How did you hear that?" "Michael told me. He said you interviewed him about the debt and the comeback." "Maya, do you understand what you're about to publish?" Maya pulled out her notebook. "I understand that I've discovered one of the most inspiring stories in sports history. Uncle David, this story shows Jordan's strength, not his weakness." Uncle David shook his head. "You don't understand the consequences. There are still people who could be hurt by this story." "What do you mean?" Uncle David looked around the restaurant to make sure nobody was listening. "Maya, some of the investors who lent money to Michael are still alive. Some of them have families and businesses that could be affected if their names become public." Maya hadn't thought about this angle. "But I'm not trying to hurt anyone. I'm telling a story about overcoming adversity." "I know your intentions are good," Uncle David said. "But once this story is published, other reporters will start digging deeper. They'll want to find all the investors, all the creditors, all the details you haven't published." Maya realized her uncle had a point. Her story could open doors that some people preferred to keep closed. "Uncle David, what are you asking me to do?" "I'm asking you to think carefully about whether this story needs to be told. Michael kept this secret for 30 years for good reasons." Maya felt conflicted. She had spent weeks researching this story. She had Jordan's permission to publish it, but she also respected her uncle's concern. "Let me ask you something," Maya said. "Do you think this story would help people or hurt people?" Uncle David was quiet for a moment. "I think it would help some people and hurt others. The question is whether the help is worth the potential harm." Maya ordered a sandwich, but she wasn't hungry. She was thinking about all the people she had interviewed. Harold Chen, Lisa Washington, the teachers, the coaches, the teammates. Uncle David, everyone I talked to said the same thing. "This story is inspirational. It shows that even the greatest people face serious problems and find ways to overcome them." "But at what cost?" Uncle David asked. "What if publishing this story hurts Harold Chen's family? What if it affects business relationships that are still important to people?" Maya realized this was the most difficult decision of her career. She had a great story that could advance her career and inspire millions of people. But she also had a responsibility to consider the consequences. "Can I ask you something honestly?" Maya said. "Are you worried about the story affecting your relationship with Jordan?" Uncle David looked directly at her. "Yes, I am. Michael trusted me to keep his secrets for 30 years. If this story damages him or the people who helped him, he might blame me for not stopping you." Maya understood her uncle's position. His loyalty to Jordan had protected his career for decades. "But Uncle David, Jordan gave me permission to publish this story. He wants people to know the truth." "Michael thinks he wants people to know," Uncle David said. "But he might feel differently when he sees the reaction. When other reporters start calling Harold Chen and digging into private business deals from 30 years ago." Maya spent the rest of lunch thinking about her uncle's concerns. When they finished eating, she still hadn't made a decision. "Uncle David, can I ask you to do something?" "What?" "Can you call Jordan and tell him about your concerns? If he still wants me to publish the story after hearing your perspective, then I'll go ahead. But if he has second thoughts, I'll consider holding it back." Uncle David nodded. "That's fair. I'll call him this afternoon." Maya went back to her apartment and waited. She reread her story, looking at it from a different perspective. Was she about to help people by showing them that failure could be overcome? Or was she about to invade the privacy of people who had moved on from a difficult time in their lives? Her phone rang at 4 o'clock. It was Uncle David. "Maya, I talked to Michael. He wants to meet with you again. Tonight, 7 o'clock. Same place as before." Maya arrived at Jordan's office feeling nervous. She didn't know if he was going to ask her to kill the story or give her additional quotes. Jordan was waiting in the same conference room where they had talked before. But this time, he wasn't alone. Uncle David was there too, along with another man Maya didn't recognize. "Miss Chen," Jordan stood up as she entered. "This is my attorney, Robert Hayes. I asked him to join us for this conversation." Maya shook hands with the lawyer and sat down. She could feel the tension in the room. "Miss Chen," Jordan began, "David has expressed some concerns about your story. I want to address those concerns directly." Maya pulled out her notebook. "Mr. Jordan, are you asking me not to publish the story?" "No," Jordan said firmly. "I'm asking you to publish it exactly the way we discussed. But I want to make sure you understand what might happen after you do." Jordan explained that other reporters would probably investigate further after Maya's story was published. They'll want to find Harold Chen, interview him, dig into all the business deals. Some of those investors are still alive and might not want that attention. "Are you worried about them?" Maya asked. "I'm worried about their families. Harold Chen is 86 years old. He doesn't need reporters bothering him about business deals from 30 years ago." Jordan looked directly at Maya. "But I also believe this story needs to be told. Not for me, but for other people who are facing similar crises." The lawyer, Robert Hayes, spoke up. "Miss Chen, if you publish this story, we want to include a statement asking other reporters to respect the privacy of the people involved." Maya thought about this request. "That's reasonable. I can include a statement like that." Jordan leaned forward. "Miss Chen, I want you to publish this story. But I want you to publish it because it will help people, not because it will advance your career." Maya felt the weight of that statement. "Mr. Jordan, this story will help my career, but that's not why I'm publishing it. I'm publishing it because I think people need to hear that failure doesn't have to be permanent." "Good," Jordan said. "That's the right reason." Uncle David spoke up. "Maya, I'm sorry if I made you doubt yourself today. I was just trying to protect everyone involved. I understand, Maya said. You were right to raise those concerns. Jordan stood up and walked to the window. Miss Chen, there's one more thing I want you to include in your story. What's that? I want you to include Harold Chen's current contact information. If people are inspired by this story and want to thank him for giving me a second chance, they should be able to do that. Maya was surprised. Are you sure he would want that? Jordan smiled. I called Harold this afternoon. He said he would be honored to hear from people who found hope in our story. Maya realized that Jordan had thought through all the consequences of publishing her story. He wasn't just agreeing to it. He was embracing it as a way to help others. Mr. Jordan, is there anything else you want me to add to the story? Yes. I want you to end it with this. The greatest victory isn't avoiding failure. The greatest victory is what you do after you fail. And the greatest championship isn't the one you win for yourself. It's the one you win for the people you love. Maya wrote down Jordan's words. She realized that this wasn't just a quote for her story. It was Jordan's life philosophy, earned through the hardest experience of his life. As the meeting ended, Jordan shook Maya's hand one final time. Miss Chen, thank you for understanding what this story really means. It's not about basketball or money. It's about love and family, and the power of determination. Maya left Jordan's office feeling confident about her decision. She had a story that would inspire millions of people. She had Jordan's full support and cooperation. And she had a responsibility to tell it in a way that honored everyone involved. Maya went home and made her final edits to the story. She added the statement about respecting privacy and included Harold Chen's contact information with his permission. As she prepared to submit the story for publication, Maya thought about everything she had learned during her investigation. She had started with a simple question about spending habits and discovered a story about the human capacity to overcome any obstacle. Maya looked at her computer screen one final time. Her story was ready. Tomorrow, the world would learn the truth about Michael Jordan's greatest comeback. Not the comeback to basketball, but the comeback from failure to triumph, from fear to courage, and from crisis to championship. Maya submitted her story to the Charlotte Observer at 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday night. She had spent weeks researching, interviewing, and writing. Now all she could do was wait. Her editor, Sarah Martinez, called her at 6:30 a.m. the next morning. Maya, I just finished reading your Jordan story. This is incredible. Are you absolutely certain about all these facts? Maya had prepared for this question. Sarah, I have recorded interviews with Jordan himself confirming everything. I have multiple independent sources. I have documentary evidence. This story is rock solid. Maya, do you understand what you've written here? This isn't just a sports story. This is going to be international news. Maya felt her heart racing. I know it's big, but I want to make sure we handle it responsibly. Sarah explained that the newspaper's legal team would need to review the story before publication. They would also want to verify some of the sources independently. Maya, if everything checks out, we're going to publish this as our lead story on Sunday. And we're going to offer it to national news services. Maya hung up the phone and realized her life was about to change dramatically. If her story went national, she would become known as the reporter who broke the biggest sports story in decades. Throughout Friday, Maya's phone rang constantly. Sarah Martinez called with questions from the legal team. The newspaper's fact-checkers wanted contact information for her sources. The sports editor wanted to discuss follow-up stories. On Saturday morning, Maya got a call that surprised her. It was Harold Chen. Miss Chen, I hope you don't mind me calling. Michael gave me your number. I wanted to thank you for handling our story with such care and respect. Maya was touched by Harold's call. Mr. Chen, thank you for trusting me with your part of the story. I hope I've told it the right way. You have. I read the version that Michael forwarded to me. You've shown that this story is about much more than money. It's about character and family and the power of determination. Harold told Maya that he had already received several phone calls from people who had heard about the story through mutual friends. People are calling to say they're inspired by how Michael turned his crisis into triumph. That's exactly what we hoped would happen. Maya asked Harold if he was concerned about the attention the story might bring. At my age, I'm not worried about attention. I'm proud of the role I played in Michael's comeback. We gave him a chance to fix his mistakes instead of just punishing him for them. Harold paused. Miss Chen, I want you to know that Michael Jordan is one of the finest people I've ever known. What happened in 1995 was a business crisis, not a character flaw. The way he handled it showed his true character. On Saturday evening, Maya received a call from Jordan himself. Miss Chen, the story comes out tomorrow. Are you ready for what's going to happen? Maya had been thinking about this all day. Mr. Jordan, I think so. But I'm a little nervous about the reaction. Don't be nervous. Be proud. You've told a story that's going to help a lot of people. Jordan explained that he had already started receiving calls from friends and former teammates who had heard about the story. Everyone is saying the same thing. This story makes my achievements even more impressive, not less impressive. Have you heard from your family? Juanita is proud that we're finally telling the complete truth. My kids think it's important for people to know that even successful people face serious problems sometimes. Jordan told Maya that several other athletes had already contacted him about their own financial problems. That's why this story needed to be told. There are people right now who are facing the same crisis I faced in 1995. Maybe our story will help them find a way through it. Maya asked Jordan if he had any regrets about agreeing to the interview. None at all. I've been carrying this secret for 30 years. It feels good to finally tell the truth. Sunday morning arrived with beautiful weather in Charlotte. Maya woke up early and drove to the nearest newsstand to buy a copy of the Charlotte Observer. Her story was on the front page with a huge headline: The Secret Behind Jordan's Comeback. How $43 million in debt motivated the greatest run in sports history. Maya's hands shook slightly as she read her own words in print. Seeing the story in the newspaper made it feel real in a way that writing it hadn't. By 10 a.m., Maya's phone was ringing constantly. Reporters from ESPN, CNN, NBC, and ABC all wanted to interview her about her investigation. The Associated Press wanted to distribute her story nationally. Maya's editor, Sarah Martinez, called with updates throughout the day. Maya, this story is exploding. We've had calls from newspapers in New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, and Atlanta. Everyone wants to know if you have more details or additional interviews. Maya explained that she had told the complete story as she understood it. There weren't any secret details or hidden sources. The story is exactly what we published. Jordan faced a financial crisis, used basketball to solve it, and turned his fear into the motivation for his greatest achievements. By Sunday evening, Maya's story had been picked up by major news outlets across the country. ESPN was planning a one-hour special about Jordan's financial crisis and comeback. Sports Illustrated wanted to do a cover story, expanding on Maya's reporting. Maya received a text message from Jordan. Congratulations on a job well done. The truth is finally out there. On Monday morning, Maya woke up to find herself at the center of a media storm. Her phone had dozens of missed calls and hundreds of text messages. The reaction to her story was overwhelmingly positive. Sports commentators were calling it the missing piece of the Jordan puzzle, and the most inspiring sports story ever told. Maya did interviews with 3 national television shows and 5 radio programs. Everyone wanted to know how she had discovered the story and convinced Jordan to talk about it. I think Mr. Jordan was ready to tell this story, Maya explained in her interviews. He had been carrying this secret for 30 years, and he realized it could help other people who are facing similar crises. The most gratifying response came from readers who said the story had inspired them to face their own problems with renewed determination. Maya received emails from people who were dealing with financial problems, health crises, family difficulties, and career setbacks. They all said that Jordan's story had given them hope that they could overcome their challenges. One email particularly moved Maya. It was from a single mother in Detroit who had lost her job and was faces foreclosure on her house. Thank you for showing me that even Michael Jordan faced the possibility of losing his home, the woman wrote. If he could find a way to fight back and win, maybe I can too. Maya realized that her story had accomplished exactly what Jordan had hoped. It wasn't just entertainment or sports news. It was inspiration for people who needed to believe that failure wasn't permanent. By the end of the week, Maya had received job offers from 3 national publications. The New York Times wanted her to cover sports. ESPN offered her a position as an investigative reporter. Sports Illustrated wanted her to write feature stories. But the offer that meant the most to Maya came from Jordan himself. He called her on Friday evening. Miss Chen, I've been thinking about our conversation last week. You said this story was about the power of the human spirit to overcome obstacles. Yes, that's exactly what I think it's about. I agree, and I think there are more stories like this that need to be told. Stories about people who've overcome impossible odds through determination and love. Jordan explained that he wanted to fund a foundation for investigative journalism focused on inspirational stories. I want to support reporters like you who are interested in finding stories that help people, not just stories that sell newspapers. Maya was speechless. Mr. Jordan, that's incredibly generous. It's not generous, it's necessary. The world needs more stories about triumph over adversity, about people who refused to give up when everything seemed hopeless. Jordan told Maya that he wanted her to be the first journalist supported by his foundation. You've shown that you can tell difficult stories with respect and integrity. I want you to find more stories like mine, stories that prove the human spirit can overcome anything. Maya felt tears in her eyes. She had started this investigation hoping to advance her career. Instead, she had found a calling.
Mr. Jordan, I would be honored to accept that opportunity.
As Maya hung up the phone, she thought about how much her life had changed in just 2 weeks. She had gone from a local sports reporter to a national journalist with a mission to find and tell stories of hope and redemption. But more importantly, she had learned that the best stories aren't about famous people or shocking secrets. The best stories are about the power of love, determination, and courage to transform failure into triumph. Maya looked at her notebook, filled with quotes from her investigation. Jordan's final words to her were written on the last page. The greatest championship isn't the one you win for yourself. It's the one you win for the people you love. Maya smiled as she realized that Jordan's story was just the beginning. There were millions of people facing their own crises, their own moments of failure and fear. And maybe, just maybe, some of them would find the strength to fight back after reading about a basketball player who had turned his worst crisis into his greatest victory. Not through talent or luck, but through love, determination, and the unbreakable belief that failure doesn't have to be the end of the story. 6 months after Maya's story was published, she stood in a packed auditorium at the University of North Carolina. Michael Jordan was giving a speech about overcoming failure, and Maya had been invited as a special guest. The auditorium was filled with college students, business leaders, and people from all walks of life. Everyone had come to hear Jordan talk about his financial crisis and how he had turned it into motivation for his greatest achievements. Maya looked around the room and saw faces of every age and background. Her story had touched people she never could have imagined. Single parents, struggling entrepreneurs, people facing bankruptcy, students worried about their future. Jordan stepped up to the microphone. He looked confident and relaxed. Very different from the worried man Maya had first met at the golf tournament. 6 months ago, Jordan began. I told a reporter something I had never told anyone before. I told her that my 1995 comeback wasn't really about missing basketball. It was about saving my family from financial disaster. The audience was completely quiet, hanging on every word. That reporter was Maya Chen, and she's here with us tonight. Maya helped me understand that my story could help other people. She convinced me that sharing my failure could be just as valuable as sharing my success. Jordan looked directly at Maya and smiled. Maya, would you please stand up? Maya felt embarrassed but stood up as the audience applauded. She had never expected to become part of Jordan's story in this way. When Maya first asked me about my spending habits, Jordan continued, I almost didn't answer. I was embarrassed about the financial mistakes I had made. But Maya helped me see that failure isn't something to hide. It's something to learn from and share. Jordan told the audience about his business failures in the early 1990s. He explained how he had borrowed money for investments he didn't understand, how he had lost over $40 million, and how his family had almost lost everything. I want you to understand something, Jordan said. Success isn't about never failing. Success is about what you do after you fail. Do you give up, or do you find a way to turn that failure into fuel for something better? A young woman in the front row raised her hand. Mr. Jordan, how did you find the courage to keep going when everything seemed hopeless? Jordan thought for a moment. I found courage by remembering what I was fighting for. Not my reputation or my pride, but my family's security and future. When you're fighting for something bigger than yourself, you discover strength you didn't know you had. A middle-aged man asked, what advice would you give to someone who's facing financial problems right now? First, Don't be ashamed to ask for help, Jordan replied. I had to swallow my pride and work with creditors who could have destroyed me. Instead, they gave me a chance to fix my mistakes. Jordan continued. Second, focus on what you can control. I couldn't change the fact that my investments had failed, but I could control how hard I worked to earn back what I owed. A college student asked, Mr. Jordan, do you think your financial crisis made you a better basketball player? Jordan smiled. Absolutely. When I came back in 1995, I wasn't just playing for championships. I was playing for my family's survival. That gave me a level of motivation I had never experienced before. He explained how the pressure of owing money had actually improved his focus and determination. Every practice, every game, every shot mattered because I knew my family's future depended on my performance. That kind of pressure either destroys you or makes you stronger than you ever thought possible. After the formal speech, Jordan took questions for another hour. Maya was amazed by how openly he discussed his failures and what he had learned from them. When the event ended, Jordan asked Maya to join him for dinner. They went to a quiet restaurant where they could talk privately. Maya, I want to thank you again for convincing me to tell this story, Jordan said as they sat down. Mr. Jordan, I should be thanking you. Your story has changed my entire career. Maya told Jordan about some of the responses she had received to her article. A businessman in Ohio had read the story and decided not to declare bankruptcy, instead working with his creditors to restructure his debt. A single mother in Michigan had used Jordan's example to motivate herself through nursing school while raising 3 children. The most amazing thing, Maya said, is how many people have told me that your story gave them permission to see failure as a beginning instead of an ending. Jordan nodded. That's exactly what I hoped would happen. I spent 30 years thinking my financial crisis was something to be ashamed of. Now I realize it was actually my greatest teacher. Maya asked Jordan about his foundation for investigative journalism. We've already funded 5 reporters to investigate inspirational stories, Jordan said. Stories about people who've overcome addiction, poverty, illness, family tragedies. Stories that show the power of the human spirit. Jordan explained that the foundation had received hundreds of story suggestions from readers of Maya's article. People want to share their own comeback stories. They want others to know that failure doesn't have to be permanent. Maya told Jordan about her new assignment from the foundation. She was investigating a story about a woman who had built a successful business after losing everything in a divorce. These stories are everywhere, Maya said. I just never knew how to look for them before. Your story taught me that the most inspiring news isn't about people who never fail. It's about people who fail and find a way to come back stronger. Jordan looked out the restaurant window at the Charlotte skyline. Maya, can I tell you something that I've never told anyone else? Maya pulled out her notebook instinctively, then realized this might not be for publication. Is this for the record? Jordan smiled. Everything is for the record now. I'm done keeping secrets. He told Maya that his financial crisis had actually saved his marriage. Before 1995, Juanita and I were growing apart. I was traveling all the time for business deals, focused on making money instead of spending time with my family. When the crisis hit, we had to work together to survive. Jordan explained that facing the possibility of losing everything had reminded him what was truly important. The crisis forced me to choose between my business ambitions and my family. I chose my family, and that choice made our marriage stronger than it had ever been. Maya asked Jordan about his children's reaction to the public revelation of the family's financial problems. They're proud that we've told the truth. Jordan said, my son Jeffrey told me that learning about our crisis helped him understand why I was so intense during those championship years. He said it made him proud of how our family stuck together. Jordan told Maya that his daughter had written a school essay about overcoming challenges, using her father's financial crisis as an example. She wrote that the most important lesson I taught her wasn't about basketball. It was about never giving up when things seem impossible. As dinner ended, Jordan gave Maya a final piece of advice. Maya, you've started something important with this story. People are hungry for examples of hope and redemption. Keep finding those stories and telling them with the same respect and integrity you showed with mine. Maya drove home thinking about how much her life had changed since that day at the golf tournament. She had started with a simple question about spending habits and discovered one of the most inspiring stories she had ever heard. More importantly, she had learned that the best journalism isn't about exposing scandals or secrets. It's about finding and sharing stories that help people believe in their own capacity to overcome obstacles. Maya's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from the single mother in Detroit who had first written to her about the inspiration she found in Jordan's story. "Maya, I wanted you to know that I saved my house. After reading Mr. Jordan's story, I decided to fight instead of giving up. I got a new job, worked with my bank, and found a way through. Thank you for showing me that even famous people face the same problems as regular people." Maya smiled as she read the message. This was why Jordan's story mattered. Not because he was famous, but because his experience proved that anyone could overcome their worst crisis with determination, hard work, and love for the people who mattered most. As Maya pulled into her driveway, she thought about Jordan's famous quote, "I've failed over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed." Now she understood what he really meant. Success wasn't about avoiding failure. It was about using failure as fuel for something greater. It was about turning your worst moments into your greatest motivation. Maya looked at her notebook, filled with ideas for new stories about people who had overcome impossible odds. She realized that Jordan's financial crisis had been more than just a basketball comeback story. It had been proof that the human spirit could transform any failure into triumph, any fear into courage, and any crisis into an opportunity for greatness. Not through talent or luck, but through love, determination, and the unbreakable belief that failure doesn't have to be the end of the story. It can be the beginning of the greatest comeback of your life. Maya smiled as she got out of her car. Tomorrow, she would start investigating her next story of triumph over adversity, because she had learned that these stories were everywhere, waiting to inspire anyone who needed to believe that their current crisis didn't define their future. Just like Michael Jordan had proven 30 years ago, when he turned the worst moment of his life into the fuel for his greatest achievements. This story proves that our biggest failures can become our greatest fuel for success when we're fighting for the people we love most. We'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment and tell us your city or country. It's amazing to connect with viewers from all around the world. If this story inspired you or touched your heart, please hit that like button. It really helps us share these powerful stories with more people who need to hear them. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, famous figures whose real stories are even more inspiring than their public image. Most importantly, please share this video with your friends and family. In a world that often focuses on negativity, let's spread stories of hope, resilience, and the amazing power of the human spirit to overcome any obstacle. Because just like Michael Jordan learned, failure doesn't have to be the end of your story. It can be the beginning of your greatest comeback. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next story.